The ash had barely cooled on the broken stones of King's Landing when Arya Stark slipped through the jagged breach in the outer walls, the pale dawn throwing blades of rose gold across rubble and ruin. The once gleaming city was quiet now, muffled beneath the settling dust of dragonfire and the muted sorrow of its survivors. Yet amid the hush lay one last ember of resistance, a woman whose name had defined terror and intrigue for a generation. Cersei Lannister, hunted queen, lingering at the edge of the city's catacombs like a cornered lioness too proud to crawl, still too cunning to die. Arya's boots found no echo on the scorched flagstones. The lessons of Braavos dwelled in her bones, silent as mist. She moved as a shadow along collapsed corridors, every flicker of torchlight traced in the mirror-smooth steel of needle at her hip, and the stiletto of Valyrian glass sheathed in her sleeve. In the far distance, the city's new rulers, Daenerys Unsullied, Jones Northmen, the ragged remnants of the Riverlands armies, strained to erect order from ruin. But none knew as she did that Cersei had survived the Red Keep's collapse, smuggled through secret passages by some last loyal hand, fled beneath the city into the warren of ancient tunnels, scrawled on half-remembered maps, mastered by Varys and Qyburn. The flayed lion banners littering the debris testified to a house in freefall, gold thread dulled by soot. Arya's pulse was calm. She had rehearsed this hunt 1,000 nights beside campfires. Each detail, each pivot, each evasive ploy, and now the game unfolded almost peacefully. The smell of dust and wet stone guided her into the narrow undercroft that once served as a wine cellar before Maegor's tunnels rethreaded the palace foundations. There, faint notes of lantern oil betrayed human presence, and behind them something more pungent, sour wine and unwashed velvet. She found Cersei crouched upon a toppled cask, barefoot tapping in poisonous rhythm, hands cradling a goblet chipped at the rim, the lioness' green-gold eyes no longer bright with cruelty, but banked with wary calculation. Her hair, once a gilded crown, was heavy with grit, the strands twisting into knotted loops that framed a face aged 10 years in as many nights. She held her spine erect despite the chill, despite the tremor of a heart that knew the game was lost. Arya did not announce herself. She simply stepped forward into the ragged lantern glow and let silence do what words could not. The queen's eyes narrowed. Once, Cersei had towered from the Iron Throne, gilded in prophecy, her every gesture weighing kingdoms. Now she faced a ghost wearing wolf-gray leathers stitched in the northern style, a girl she had never truly seen before, and yet somehow knew, perhaps by the set of her shoulders or the calm disdain that lived in eyes far older than the girl's frame implied. "You," Cersei said at last, voice hoarse from dust and disuse. "I remember you, the Stark whelp who played with princes." Arya's answer was a stillness that ate the torchlight. "I remember you too. You smiled when my father died." Nender. Something in Cersei flickered, not remorse but memory, as though she tasted the last echo of that long-dead victory and found its flavor rotten. "All debts are paid, child. My children are ashes in the wind. My father lies in a grave he earned." Her voice cracked on the name, yet she crushed the weakness beneath a brittle sneer. "What more do you want?" "A reckoning," Arya said. "Not at the edge of a blade in a dark tunnel where no song will note it. In the eyes of the realm you ruined." "Menderandsh." Cersei laughed, the sound hollow, sloshing wine to the earth. "The realm is a carcass tossed between tyrants. The Dragon Queen butchers innocence for fealty. Your brother would crown himself with winter wolves if he could stomach the throne. The realm is nothing but an echo of men's ambitions. And yet, you fear its judgment," Arya replied. She drew no steel, offered no threat. Presence alone sufficed. "Come peacefully, or I drag you chained through daylight like the mountain you forged. The choice is yours." Nender. Pride warred with survival behind the queen's gaze. She coughed once, stood, smoothed the tatters of her gown, and with a slow nod surrendered the shattered chalice to the floor. Take me then. Let the realm see what becomes of lions in cages." The march through the ruined streets began as a whisper of astonishment that swelled into murmurs, then shouts, a braiding of fear and vindication, as citizens emerged from shattered doorways to watch the fallen queen pass. Arya walked a pace behind, not quite escort, not quite captor, as if guiding some ancient beast home to die. No chains bound Cersei's wrists. Arya judged the weight of the gaze upon her far heavier than iron. Besides, needle-fine daggers stitched covertly through Arya's belt sufficed for any sudden need. When unsullied patrols spotted them, their commander Grey Worm strode forward, spear lowered. His granite features betrayed neither shock nor triumph, only the measured consideration of a soldier tested by too many horrors to celebrate another. He signaled, and 2 ranks fell in around Cersei. Still, Arya remained near, a silent guarantee that no summary spear point would short-circuit the justice she intended. At the threshold of the Red Keep's outer yard, where once the courts of Robert had frolicked in sunlight, scorned by Cersei's secrets, the procession halted. Daenerys Targaryen emerged from the war-scarred landing, cloaked in black and red, dragon-scale motif glimmering in morning glare. Her pale hair rippled in the ash-laden wind, her violet eyes measuring the captive that fate placed before her. The air prickled, for in Daenerys' gaze lived both deliverance and doom, and many there wondered whether fire and blood would claim one more Lannister trophy. "Queen Cersei," Daenerys spoke, each word forged of ice, "you are accused of treason, tyranny, and the slaughter of innocents. The Red Keep fell for your crimes. Kneel, and perhaps mercy shall temper justice." Cersei's lip curled. "Mercy from a Targaryen. I recall how your father defined that word." Fury flared in Daenerys' posture. Shifting weight, tensed jaw, yet she answered with a measured breath. "My father is ash. I build a new world." She raised a hand to her unsullied. "Take her below. She will stand trial before the peoples of Westeros at dawn on the morrow. Let every soul who suffered her reign look upon this day and know the old order is broken." Grey Worm saluted. Soldiers advanced. Yet as they closed, Arya's voice slipped into the charged pause. Targaryen justice? Or the realms? She must face those she wronged on every shore. North Riverlands, Dornish, even the Ironborn. Aen's head can fall, but her legend grows unless truth is spoken first. Daenerys studied the small Stark assassin whose blade once saved her king from a White Walker's night. "You came to slay her, Arya Stark. Why bind shackle to trial now?" "Because death is too simple," Arya said. "I want her to speak, to confess what she never has, to face what she wrought." A quiet smile ghosted across Daenerys' lips. Half respect, half caution. "Very well. The dragon pit will serve. Let ravens fly. The realm will judge." Then, that night, the dragon pit became a crucible of torches, packed with an uneasy parliament of lords and commons, survivors and conquerors, dragons and deerwolves waiting in their dark corners of memory. From the Reach rode what was left of House Tyrell, a single bannerman bearing an empty rose banner, petal scorched. The Riverlands sent Edmure Tully under guard of Swift and Blackwood, mortal rivals united by war's fatigue. Dorne's new princess now stood veiled in dusk-red silk, flanked by silent spearmen. The Vale's young Lord Robin perched pale and bird-boned upon a blasted stone dais, forever a child glimpsing adult shadows. And from the north came Sansa Stark, Lady of Winterfell, mantle of white wolf fur flowing over mail glinting like first frost, her cool blue regard sweeping the gathering with grave composure. At center of the pit lay a timber platform framed by iron braziers. Upon it, a simple chair, neither throne nor rack, invited Cersei to seat. She refused until Grey Worm's spear butt prodded her forward. Even then, she sat as though upon a carved lion of gold, chin lifted, emerald eyes raking the assembly with contempt too vast for her diminished station. A hush descended, broken only by the crackle of pitch-soaked torches and the faint rumble of Drogon's breath somewhere beyond crumbling archways. Jon Snow, cloaked in Night's Watch black, though no watch remained, stepped before the crowd. The crown debate still fractured campfire councils, yet here he acted only as mediator, voice steady but weary. "This gathering is not king's court nor queen's tribunal," Jon said. "It is the realm itself. Cersei Lannister stands accused by all. There will be no illusions. Her fate shall reflect the truth we carve tonight." He glanced to Arya, who remained at the platform's edge, eyes sharp but distant. Accusers rose one by one. Lord Tarly, son to the man Cersei executed with wildfire, spoke of burning flesh on grassy swords. The Riverlands farmers recounted daughters taken, sons hung in cages. From King's Landing's own streets came silent mothers whose children drowned beneath wildfire's green bloom when Cersei incinerated the sept. Their grief filled the pit with a keening wind that seemed to scour the ancient mortar. Cersei listened, neither blinking nor bending. She sipped water, smoothed her soiled gown, and when at last Jon asked for her reply, she spoke as though reading a page long etched in her heart. "I did what any lion does when the spears close in. I protected my cubs, my house, my name. You call it tyranny, I call it survival. No queen sits lightly upon the Iron Throne. Robert drowned the realm in wine. Aerys bathed it in flame. Yet you call me mad because I dared fight enemies at my gate." She turned, letting her voice carry. "Do you believe Daenerys Stormborn more merciful? Ask the charred bones of your neighbors." A murmur rippled, fear disguised as thought. Arya's gaze flickered to Daenerys on her stone seat, the Dragon Queen's face a mask of luminous calm. But behind those violet eyes smoldered unspoken fire, and Arya wondered for the first time whether this trial was truly about Cersei at all, or the realm's hunger to measure new tyrants against old. Sansa's turn came. She stepped upon the platform, her dignity wrapping her like frost. "You destroyed my family," she said. "Watched while Joffrey severed my father's head, summoned my innocence to your court as shield, then flung me to monsters, and still I stand. Justice is not vengeance, Queen Cersei. Vengeance already haunts these walls. Justice is truth, and truth is that every cruelty you birthed ends tonight." Cersei's smile cut like a razor. "Truth? Truth is children are pawns, sisters are coin, fathers disposable. The game devoured us all. I merely played better until the dragon flipped the board. Now," soft gasps fluttered through the pit. Sansa inclined her head as though acknowledging a trifle. "Then play ends here." She stepped back. Jon spoke again. "Does the accused wish to call witness?" Cersei's laughter lifted like broken glass. "I call no one. None left to call. The dead bear my name and cannot speak." Thus the tribunal moved to judgment. Lords and ladies huddled in whispered knots. Common folk, given voice by the broken times, shouted their verdicts. "Guilty, guilty, guilty," echoing through vaults older than Targaryen rule. Yet, even as consensus gathered, Arya felt disquiet coil within her. Cersei's crimes were legend, yet the spectacle risked birthing new martyrdom. And above all, she feared Daenerys' thirst. Already the Dragon Queen's nostrils flared at each chant for heads. Grey Worm advanced, parchment in hand, to read sentence. But before he could speak, Arya stepped forward. The pit grew silent at the wolf's defiance. "Sentence must match crime, and crime's root is fear," Arya said, voice low yet vibrant. Cersei feared prophecy, feared children dead, throne lost. She brewed wildfire because fear is quick and fire quicker. If we answer that with one more clean execution, we teach future queens that blades are swifter than words. Jon's brow furrowed, torn between affection and caution. "What do you propose, sister?" "Strip her of crowns, titles, name battle. Let her live, not as Cersei Lannister the Lion Queen, but as plain woman beholden to those she wronged. She will serve out her years tending the orphans of her wars, rebuilding what she shattered." Every dawn she will carry stones of the sept she burned to the river, and every night she will hear the children cry in her dreams. Then tau. A stunned hush followed. Some scoffed at leniency. Others found poetry in it. Daenerys' eyes narrowed, weighing mercy against the roar of old Targaryen retribution. Cersei herself regarded Arya with baffled rage. You would enslave me to grief? Better slash my throat now. No, that is release, Arya answered. This is atonement. Daenerys rose, cloak swirling like the beat of unseen wings. Mercy may build the new world, she said slowly. But a queen's crimes cannot pass unpunished. She turned to the assembly. Let there be 2 sentences. For 1 year, Cersei Lannister shall labor in the ruins under watchful eye. No finery, no servants, no name. If after a year the realm deems her penance met, she shall live in exile, landless, her house extinguished. She gestured to the crowd. All those in favor? Voices surged, a ragged yet strong eye, tempered by the rumble of dissent. It was enough. Grey Worm bowed his head. Yet in that instant the air snapped with thunder. Drogon's shadow swept across the torches, his roar bellowing judgment of his own. Soldiers raised spears. Civilians scattered, though Drogon did not leap to flame. He perched upon the broken wall, colossal and inscrutable, black eyes reflecting torch fire like twin infernos caged. Arya felt the tremor in the stone at her feet. Daenerys' hand lifted, calm yet steel-sure, and the dragon stilled. He knows fear's scent, she said. Let us show him courage instead. She nodded to Grey Worm. Cersei was hauled upright. She spat blood where a split lip reopened, but kept her head high as torches escorted her through yawning gatehouses toward the Red Keep's shattered heart. Arya watched until shadow claimed the queen's silhouette, watched until the hush collapsed, voices swelling again in debate over the future. Sansa stepped beside Arya. You chose mercy. I chose memory, Arya whispered. Let the realm remember what fate truly is, not quick death, but the long burden of truth. Sansa touched Arya's sleeve. And you? What do you do now? Dain. Arya's eyes strayed to the sea's silver glimmer beyond distant rooftops. There are still names on my list, she said, though her voice lacked its old edge. But perhaps some can erase themselves if they live long enough to see what they've done. Cersei's first dawn as penitent came with a cart of shattered stone and a rough-spun tunic rank with tannin. Unsullied guards marched her to the cracked husk of the Sept of Baelor, once her triumph, now her burden. Children of the city watched from alleys, thin, wary, unconvinced that the queen who torched their mother's prayers could ever be less than monster. Cersei lifted each stone with white-knuckled hands, nails splintering, shoulders trembling beneath bruises no maester would salve. By noon her fingers bled. By dusk blood mixed with mortar as she rebuilt the orphanage rising beside the river, the same river where ashes of Sept victims had drifted. Arya observed from rooftops. Silent, not gloating, not forgiving, simply watching. Each day the queen broke a little more. Fine skin cracked, voice rasped, arrogance melted into numb resolve. Yet each day children crept closer, drawn not by pity, but by the grotesque novelty of power reversed. One boy tossed a pebble that glanced off Cersei's brow. She flinched but did not lash out. Another day, a girl offered water. Cersei drank, tears unseen in dust. Weeks passed beneath a canvas sky of early summer. Rumors spread. The lioness who once wore crowns now scrubbed latrines beside beggars. A song was born in Flea Bottom, low, mocking. Yet by its third verse, something softer crept in. A comprehension of the frailty shared by all who breathe the same smoke-clogged air. When Cersei stumbled one twilight and could not rise, 2 orphan girls dragged her to shade, bound her ragged palms with linen stolen from a Septa's abandoned wardrobe. The next morning she placed a stone upon the growing wall, eyes lingering on the children's faces with something like wonder. Arya recorded each moment in memory, uncertain what she sought. Redemption? Proof that wolves could reshape lions? Or perhaps only a reason to believe vengeance was not the realm's only teacher. Across the city, Daenerys rebuilt her dominion, edicts to free indentured guilds, grain distributed to refugees, tribunals sorting traitor from victim. Yet whispers coiled of unsullied patrols growing ruthless, of Dothraki bands balking at new forged discipline, of dragons soaring in restless arcs, above fields still blackened. Tyrion served as hand, quelling dissent with silvered tongue. But Arya sensed tension in every courtly bow. The realm balanced on a knife sharpened by fear of relapse into fire. On the 67th day of Cersei's servitude, Arya found her at dusk beside the orphanage wall, gazing over the city's fractured skyline. Blood crusted at the corner of her nail beds. Gray strands threaded her once gleaming hair. Yet a quiet dignity had rooted where arrogance once bloomed. "Why do you haunt me, Stark?" Cersei asked without turning. "Habits de heart," Arya replied. "I want to know if monsters can change." "You think I'm changed?" "I think you're afraid of dying forgotten." Cersei breathed, a soft tremor. "I am afraid of my children's faces at night. They watch me lift stones I once cast at others. They say nothing, only wait. Then silence stretched between them. The last torches flickered along the Blackwater rush. "I can end your fear," Arya said. "Not threat, but simple offer. A blade is merciful." Cersei turned at last. In her eyes glimmered a tear. Not for self, Arya sensed, but for something unreachable. Mercy is gift to the innocent. I forfeited that word long ago. Let the ghosts remain. They build more than stones and orphanages. They build memory. She touched the wall, rough under her palm. "Perhaps that is enough." Arya nodded. For the first time she felt the list burn less hot upon her heart. She sheathed her undrawn dagger and left without another word. The year's wheel turned. Cersei's walls rose, brick by penitent brick. The orphanage's frame took shape. Children learned to read from parchment she scavenged, learned to speak of lions without fear. Birds nested in scaffold beams, singing each morning as though miracle. When ravens at last flew again from the Red Keep, they carried decree of Daenerys. The penance year was done, the trial's second sentence ready. Cersei stood at dawn in the dragon pit once more. Her hair shorn to shoulder, her skin leathered by labor. Yet in her posture lived neither queen nor prisoner, only a woman wary of whatever future she had not earned. The realm gathered, though fewer torches blazed, fewer jeers rang. Death's edge had dulled into reflection. Daenerys addressed her. "Your bondage is fulfilled. Exile awaits on the Isle of Lys. The ship leaves with tide. Speak now your last words to the realm, should you wish." Cersei's gaze swept the audience. She saw faces etched in soot and beginnings. Sansa, Jon, Tyrion, Arya, each bearing journeys interwoven with hers like wounds stitched into one tapestry. She breathed, lips parted, then found words she had never once spoken in all her reign. "I am sorry." The murmur rose, disbelief and awe entwined. Cersei's voice steadied. "I cannot return sons and daughters lost. I cannot unburn bone, but I can bear their memory. I will spend what remains of breath building homes where none had them, healing wounds I carved. That is not forgiveness, only work." Her eyes found Arya at the fringe. "If you must remember one thing, remember this. A queen's crown weighs less than her dead." She bowed, an act that stunned the pit, and straightened with shuddering dignity. No cheers followed, only a hush that felt holy in the dawn. Cersei descended the platform alone, unsullied, escorting her to the harbor. Arya watched one last time as the ship slipped beyond breakers, white sail catching sun like a ghost of shattered sigils. The realm did not forgive Cersei, yet something vital shifted. Fear lost a little ground to understanding. Vengeance ceded an inch to redemption. Weeks later, Arya rode north toward Winterfell. Beyond the neck, leaves had begun their slow bleed into autumn gold. The road smelled of birch smoke and distant frost. She carried no list now, only stories. At the crest of a ridge, she dismounted and turned once to gaze south, where the towers of King's Landing shimmered faint as childhood dreams. Somewhere on a Lysany dock, a former queen began a humble life among strangers, her past a tether and a torch. Somewhere beneath Dragonstone's basalt throne, a dragon queen weighed flame against mercy. Somewhere in the north, a lady wove peace from ashes. And Arya, once a girl of vengeance, now rode beneath open sky, searching not for the next name to strike, but for places the world had yet to reveal. The wind shifted, carrying scents of pine and snow. Arya smiled, nudged her horse, and vanished up the road, leaving behind a realm forging its future from the tempered steel of justice, and the fragile, stubborn hope that even the darkest hearts might yet learn the weight of the stones they cast. The autumn mists thickened as Arya crossed the neck, pouring like smoke from the fens, and swallowing the crooked causeway stones beneath her gelding's hooves. She traveled light, the saddlebag slung behind her no heavier than the memory of steel at her hip, a single blade now where once she had kept many. Frost-tipped reeds brushed her boots, whispering with each restless breeze, and every rustle carried faint reminders of ghosts, the dead of Harrenhal, the whispering faces of the House of Black and White, the children she had watched die in King's Landing's gutters. But the ghosts spoke more softly these days, and she rode in silence without answering them. 2 leather-clad scouts from Winterfell's outriders greeted her at the border cairn. They bowed stiffly, still half awed by the reputation that preceded her, then guided her through pine-scented wolflands toward home. At the sight of Winterfell's gray battlements rising out of early snow, Arya felt an ache behind her ribs, half longing, half caution. The banners flapped white and dire wolf black above the ramparts, yet even from the outer fields she glimpsed changes. Scaffolds on the east wall, new stonework reddish where masons had patched scorch marks left by dragonfire during the long battle. Windows burned with lamplight, but the light seemed gentler now, less frantic than in the days of war. In the great hall, Sansa sat her oaken dais, parchment spread before her, Maester Wolkan fretting at her side. Torches shimmered along freshly lime-washed walls that still bore faint cracks, each line a memory of siege. Sansa looked up as Arya was announced, her expression melting from queenly reserve to sisterly warmth in an instant. She descended the dais without ceremony and embraced Arya hard enough that ribs clicked, then held her sister at arm's length to study the travel grime and windburn in her cheeks. "You look older," Sansa said, voice soft. So the courtiers would not hear the treble of emotion beneath it. "I feel older," Arya replied. "But I'm still the shorter wolf, apparently." Sansa managed a laugh, and the sound rippled through hall and hearth, until even the steward smiled. They supped together that night on venison broth and black bread. Sansa waved away protocol, allowing Arya to perch cross-legged on the high table like the child she once had been, sipping ale and trading glances with old faces returned from ruin. Sir Davos, now Winterfell's envoy. Lady Alice Karstark, who guarded the eastern marches. Lord Glover, beard streaked iron gray, yet eyes bright when he spoke of new-sown barley. After the feast, the sisters walked beneath the ancient weirwood. Red leaves drifted like drops of garnet upon fresh snow, the heart tree's pale trunk glowing faintly in moonlight. Arya leaned her forehead against the rough bark, breathing the cedar-sweet scent, and let the stillness ground her. At length Sansa spoke. "Word of Cersei's exile reached us 2 moons ago. They sing songs already. Some say you spared her, others that you humbled both lion and dragon." Arya shrugged. "Songs are easier to carve than truth." "Perhaps," Sansa said, "yet they carry truth farther than any raven. The North remembers what you did." "Then?" A hush settled between them, filled by winter wind, sighing through the empty branches above. Finally, Arya turned. "How fares the North?" "Quietly," Sansa said. "We rebuild, we harvest. Yet coin is scarce, roads half ruined, and southern lords send letters each week urging I bend the knee to the Dragon Queen before snowfall deepens." Her jaw tightened. "They forget the North bent before and was broken for it. Jon? He remains in King's Landing, As mediator they call it. She touched the weirwood's bark. I fear the city weighs on him more heavily than Castle Black ever did. Arya studied her sister. You could ride south and seize him by the ear. Sansa's smile was wispy. Would that fix anything? She exhaled mist above the silent pond. I need him here, but I need a free north more. Arya's gaze drifted beyond the castle roofs to where the aurora shimmered faintly violet on the far horizon. Daenerys will not easily relinquish you. She balances her realm on fear of rebellion. Giving the north its crown would inspire every other region to ask the same. I know, Sansa answered. That is why I summoned Robert Glover, Lyanna Mormont's uncle, the new Princess of Dorne, Lord Edmure. We gather at Winterfell a fortnight hence, a council of regions, something old Valyria never conceived. I would have you sit it with me. May? Arya tilted her head. You want a killer at your negotiating table. I want the woman who saved the world from darkness. I want my sister who sees lies before they are spoken. Sansa's fingers brushed Arya's. The contact was light, but the plea behind it weighty. Will you stay? At least long enough to try? Arya considered. Needle still lay in its scabbard at her hip, a reminder of paths untaken to the far west. But the appraising wolf stare in Sansa's eyes evoked their mother's steadiness, their father's honor. The war to come was not waged with swords, but with words sharper yet. And words, Arya realized, could wound or heal. She had witnessed both within the dragon pit. I'll stay, she said, for as long as it takes. The days that followed were a flurry of arrivals. Sleek Dornish palfreys splashed through the winter ford. Ironborn longships appeared at White Harbor bearing banners of the mute Kraken, promising parley in place of reaving. Wagons clattered from the riverlands with Edmure's fish trident livery, and even a delegation from the Reach. Lady Eleanor Graceford, soft-spoken but iron-willed beneath olive eyes. They came uneasy, their retinues bristling with half-drawn suspicion. Yet Winterfell's hearths burned warm, and the mead ran abundant. Each night, the great hall echoed with new dialects, clashes of pride restrained beneath Sansa's patient governance. Arya moved among them like wind through threads, listening more than speaking. She learned the Ironborn were split. Some courted the Dragon Queen's favor, others grumbled of broken promises to allow their ancient ways. In the Reach, peasant uprisings had toppled minor lords once favored by Highgarden. In Dorne, the new princess steadied her shattered realm, but demanded autonomy to heal it. They were shards of Westeros, each keen to cut, each wary of being cut deeper. Word eventually came from King's Landing. Daenerys would not attend the Northern Council in person, but she dispatched 2 envoys, Tyrion Lannister and Lord Varys' successor, a clever summer islander named Lulaquo. Their arrival accompanied the first heavy snowfall. Tyrion looked thinner than Arya remembered, his hair threaded silver at the temples, but his wit glittered still, cloaked beneath exhaustion. Lulaquo, by contrast, moved with gracious ease, taking the measure of Winterfell with quick, dark eyes that missed nothing. On the council's dawn, fires blazed in every hearth to hold back the chill, and the great hall filled until no stone showed between boots. Sansa presided beneath the direwolf banner, but her seat was carved lower than a throne, deliberately level with those of equal speakers. Arya stood behind her chair, silent sentinel. Tyrion, perched opposite, lifted a brow at her presence but said nothing. Sansa opened the council with simple words. We gather not to plot rebellion, but to shape peace. The long night ended because every people fought side by side. Let us not squander that alliance now. Done? She outlined grievances. The river tolls King's Landing still claimed despite shattered bridges. The Ironborn hostages taken by unsullied patrols violating the Queen's edicts. The North's desire to rule itself without sending grain and gold southward. As each region's speaker added wounds to the tally, Arya watched Lulaquo's quill dance across her ledger with measured calm. But Tyrion's shoulders sagged incrementally, as though every complaint were a stone added to a crumbling wall he alone must prop. When all parties had spoken, Tyrion rose, leaning on a carved cane. Friends, he began, dry irony dancing with fatigue, I would pour you each a cask of Arbor gold while we resolve these minor misunderstandings, but your Lady Stark has confiscated the entire cellar to keep us sober. So we must make do with plain words." He offered a rueful smile that drew a ripple of reluctant amusement. "Queen Daenerys sent me to listen, not to dictate. Yet you must understand the realm's treasury bleeds. Rebellion snuffed out half the kingdom's granaries, wildfire the rest. If we yield tariffs, how do we feed the crownlands this winter?" "No," Lady Graceford replied in steady voice. "We cannot feed you when we starve ourselves. Grain must first fill the bowls of those who harvested it." A murmur of assent slid like flint across the benches. Tyrion inclined his head and turned to Lulaquo, who stood. "Each region clutches autonomy like a drowning man clutches driftwood," she said, voice smooth. "Meanwhile, the sea of chaos swells. Pirates raid from the stepstones. Slavers test our shores again. Bravos whispers of unpaid debts. A realm divided will not withstand the storm's gathering." She closed her ledger. "We propose a great charter to bind these lands, rights delineated, levies balanced, each region's sovereignty recognized yet allied beneath one banner in times of war." "Another pact of submission," muttered Lord Glover. "Scripted in southern ink." "No," Lulaquo said. "A pact of balance drawn by every hand here. One realm, many crowns of equal weight. Call it the Pact of Winterfell if you like." She let the phrase dangle in the torchlit hush. Conversations burst across the hall like sudden hail on roof slate. Huddled clusters of reachmen debating tithes, Ironborn muttering over reaving rights repurposed as coastal patrol duties, island Dornishmen bargaining for safe passage of spices. Arya moved among them, intercepting sparks before they could ignite into quarrel. Her calm presence, a subtle blade sheathed but visible. Days stretched into a week of drafting and redrafting. By lamplight, Arya poured ale for tired scribes, suggested compromise phrases, saw through posturing. Lulaquo's eyes often met hers across the parchments, a silent nod of mutual recognition. Two women used to dagger edges, now forging peace. Tyrion, meanwhile, argued tariffs by day and drank quietly by night, confiding to Arya once as she passed the solar hearth, "I fear I am building a tower of parchment while the city below rots." She had no ready answer, only a hand on his shoulder. The pact neared completion when ravens arrived, bearing dire news. In King's Landing, a riot had erupted after unsullied soldiers seized bread carts bound for the poor. A splinter faction, calling itself the Red Hand, rallied the starving, with cries that dragon rule had replaced lion cruelty with fiercer fangs. Fire spread through Flea Bottom. 3 unsullied were butchered. A grain granary exploded under hidden wildfire caches once forgotten. Daenerys responded by unleashing Drogon to circle the city walls in warning. No fire fell, yet the shadow alone stoked terror. The council froze over the parchment like ice. Tyrion read the message aloud, voice threaded with dread. Silence crushed the hall after the last words. Finally, Sansa spoke. "If Dragonfear rules the south, no charter will hold," she said. "We must send envoys at once. Arya." But Arya was already striding toward the doors, pulling on wolf fur cloak. "I ride tonight." Tyrion hobbled forward. "I ride with you," he insisted. "She trusts my tongue more than steel." Lulaquo folded the charter, slid it into an oiled tube. "Take this draft, place it in her hands, show her another path exists." So they rode, Arya, Tyrion, a dozen swift outriders. Snow chased them to the neck, turned to sleet south of Moat Cailin, then to rain along the King's Road's black mud. They cut days from the journey, sleeping in saddle, sharing stale oatcakes. Tyrion's cough worsened, yet he pressed on, eyes fever-bright when the first glimpse of King's Landing's rebuilt walls rose through gray drizzle. They entered chaos. Smoke streaked the sky. Market stalls stood smashed. Unsullied patrols moved in doubled ranks. Yet beneath that steel surface, tension coiled. Graffiti slashed across burned stones. A red handprint within a broken wheel. The old sigil Daenerys used to promise revolution, now inverted in scorn. Tyrion swallowed hard. At the Red Keep, Arya felt déjà vu. The charred courtyard where she'd led Cersei weeks before, now garrisoned by grim soldiers. They were ushered to the throne room rebuilt in austere basalt rather than gilt. Daenerys' imprint, Stark and Targaryen both. The queen sat beneath a vaulted mosaic of shattered thrones reforged into a single iron spiral. Firelight licked the edges. Daenerys rose, cloak falling like wings. "You come unannounced, yet welcome." She greeted Tyrion, then her gaze landed on Arya. Curiosity and unease mingling. "Why do northern wolves prowl my halls again?" Tyrion bowed. "Your Grace, we bring a remedy to discontent. A charter drafted by every region. Balance rather than edict. Sign this, and bread riots may become bread markets." He extended the tube. Daenerys accepted, unrolling the parchment. Her violet eyes darted line to line. For a breath, Arya sensed hope flicker, then the queen's brow knit. "This pact fragments my realm," she said. "Each lord carving his slice, each merchant levying own tax. I came to break chains, not sprout new ones of selfish pledge. Yet the chains you forge may be heavier," Arya spoke, calm but cutting. "Fear cannot be bred into freedom." Daenerys' gaze chilled. "You judge me? A girl who dealt justice, then fled north to quiet snowfields?" "I saw what mercy can do," Arya replied. "And what fear does. You carry both flames in hand. Choose which to wield." Anger wavered in the queen's eyes. Sorrow followed like shadow. She turned to Tyrion. "My friend, they do not understand the fires still lit in Essos. Golden Company remnants, Iron Bank's hired swords, Volantine princes who see weakness here. If I loosen my grip, the realm will be pawned to foreign greed." "Man? Then let the realm help hold that grip," Tyrion said. "Not by terror, but by stake in its own fate." Silence pooled. Finally Daenerys sighed, rolled the charter tight, and handed it to a scribe. "I will study. No signatures yet." Outside the throne room, Tyrion sagged. A seed planted at least. Arya wasn't so sure. She felt the air tremble. Not with the weight of victory, but with tension of bent wood ready to snap. Days passed in uneasy waiting. Arya walked incognito through the city, hood shadowing her face. She saw breadlines policed by unsullied who tried gentleness yet bore spears, saw small folk painting the red hand symbol despite threat of flogging, heard whispers that some noble houses funded the agitators. One dusk she followed two masked insurgents into the blackened cellars of the Guildhall of Alchemists, discovering barrels of wildfire half buried in debris. They plotted to ignite the dragon pit during a coming speech of the queen. Arya eliminated them before dawn. Swift and silent, dragging barrels into the street where City Watch disposed of them. But she knew more vipers coiled unseen, and each decapitated head birthed two. Back at the keep, Tyrion argued daily with Lulaquo, who had arrived to counsel the queen. They pressed for public reading of the charter. Daenerys delayed, reorganizing grain distribution, doubling patrols. One night, Arya confronted her atop a rampart overlooking the Blackwater. "They fear the dragon," Arya said, snow-flecked wind tugging her hair. "Give them reason to hope instead." Daenerys' shoulders slumped beneath heavy cloak. "Hope is fragile. I held it once, in Meereen. The sons of the Harpy bled it dry." She turned to Arya. "You spared Cersei so she could suffer. Yet she sails Lycian seas rebuilding orphanages. Perhaps mercy suits lions. But dragons? When I showed mercy, I lost 2 children at the pit. I lost allies. I lost the people's faith. Fire is the tongue they heed. So teach them a new language," Arya urged. "You sound like Tyrion," Daenerys said, half-smile rueful. "Words are cheaper than ash." Still, she stared at faint winter stars. "Still, I tire of smoke." She promised to address the city on the morrow, unveiling a first reform chiseled from the charter. Reduction of tariffs on grain imported from the north and reach, plus amnesty for bred rioters who laid down arms. Tyrion exhaled relief. Arya remained wary. The Red Hand cell she'd crushed might not be alone. The speech drew thousands to the plaza before the great Seps ruins. Unsullied lined rooftops. Archers knocked arrows. Drogon circled above like a living omen. Arya melted into the crowd, needle hidden beneath cloak, eyes scanning windows. Tyrion stood on dais steps beside the queen, parchment in hand. For a heartbeat, Arya believed peace might flower. Then a girl's scream split the air. From a bell tower across the square, a Red Hand banner unfurled. Beneath it, figures heaved a green gleaming cask onto the ledge. Wildfire. Archers shouted. Chaos roared. Arya sprinted, leaping carts, shoving through bodies, but the cask tipped, spilling neon liquid that hissed toward torches below. She loosed a dagger through the air. Silver streak severing the torchbearer's wrist, yet a single droplet met flame. A burst of green erupted, engulfing the tower in searing emerald. Shockwaves slammed the plaza, tossing men like dolls. Arya hit cobblestones hard, ears ringing. Above, Drogon shrieked rage. Daenerys' face contorted as she watched burning bodies tumble. Tears cut through soot on her cheeks, but rage eclipsed sorrow fast as wildfire swallows timber. She climbed upon Drogon's lowered neck, ignoring Tyrion's desperate cry. The dragon launched skyward, black wings beating hurricane gusts. Arya's heart hammered. If Drogon rained fire now, the Charter's promise would turn to ash. She shoved through panicked crowds toward Tyrion, who staggered dazed. "Stop her," Arya rasped. "How?" Tyrion croaked. "She flies beyond reach." Arya scanned chaos. The flickering green blaze, the dragon's dark silhouette wheeling above. Panic churned below. Any second, Daenerys might unleash ruin. Arya's mind raced. Drogon obeyed his mother, but she had once seen him yield to Jon's calm. Jon remained in the keep. She dashed, lungs burning, weaving past fleeing crowds, through archways, up marble steps still cracked from siege. Guards tried to block her. She slipped beneath spears, sprinting the corridor to the council chamber where Jon pored over city maps with commanders. "Arya," he began, but she cut him off. "She's in the sky and ready to burn. Only you can pull her back." Jon's eyes widened. Without hesitation he ran. They ascended to the highest turret, where wind battered banners. Drogon swooped low, flame shimmering in his throat. Below, the Red Hand insurgents still hurled stones, but most of the crowd cowered, no longer rioters but victims. Jon stepped to the crenellation and raised both arms, voice booming like horn. "Daenerys, look at me." The dragon banked, mother's gaze drawn by the call. Arya watched as Jon met Daenerys' eyes across the gulf. Pleading, imploring. He pointed to the people huddled, to children shielding infants, to wounded, unsullied aiding civilians, to the charred tower where insurgents too had perished in their own fire. His voice floated up fractured words Arya could not catch, but the tenor was clear. "Mercy." Up in the saddle, Daenerys bowed her head. Drogon hovered, flame guttering. The queen's shoulders shook. At last, she guided him toward the harbor, releasing her grief in thunderous roar over empty water. No fire touched the city. Relief rippled through plaza and palace alike, yet the incident left scars deeper than stone. That night, Daenerys summoned Tyrion, Luluako, Jon, and Arya to her solar. She was pale, drained, but a stubborn light flickered behind her tired eyes. "I have signed the charter," she said, sliding parchment across the table, ink still wet beneath her seal. "And I will rename it the Concord of Dragons and Wolves. Let each region hold its rights, and let the crown serve them, not rule." Then, Tyrion closed his eyes, shoulders shuddering. Daenerys turned to Arya. "You saved us twice, once from my wrath, once from my fear. I owe you a debt I cannot repay." Arya shook her head. "Repay the realm. Make this charter breathe." Daenerys nodded. Then swear yourselves to guide me. I will form a council of thrones. 1 seat for each region, each voice equal. She glanced to Jon. Will the North sit? Jon looked to Arya, then to Sansa's distant memory. If Sansa agrees, yes. Arya felt tension uncoil within her chest. Not all ghosts were vanquished, but some learned to rest. Winter's first true storm rolled over King's Landing 3 nights later. Snow-dusted broken columns turned blood-stained plazas pearly white. In the Red Keeps restored Godswood, transported root and branch from Winterfell at Daenerys' request. Arya knelt beneath slender white branches, watching flakes settle on the crimson leaves. Footsteps crunched behind her. Tyrion lowered himself onto the carved bench nearby. I once mocked my father for planting gardens while war brewed. Perhaps he knew something I did not. Arya smiled faintly. Gardens grow slow, wars burn fast. She traced a leaf's vein. I may yet leave, sail west as I always planned. But for now, there's soil here, and winter rains feed roots. Tyrion's eyes blinked snowflakes from lashes. Stay long enough to see spring, at least. Then decide. She nodded. Somewhere beyond courtyard walls, Daenerys met with Lulaquo to finalize supplies for the Reach. Grey Worm drilled new city patrols of mixed peoples. Sansa's Raven arrived, confirming the North's provisional assent. The Concord would need defending. Against resentment, against ambition, against the restless tides of human frailty. But it existed. Arya rose, brushing snow from her cloak. Come on, she said to Tyrion. Let's find mulled wine before your nose freezes off. He chuckled. Lead on, Lady Stark. And perhaps, in this fragile peace, teach a dwarf to dance amid the wolf's garden. Medine? They walked through falling snow toward warm light and voices, leaving footprints that the storm soon filled. Yet beneath the drifting white, the path remained, pressed firm into earth that for the first time in years, felt ready to nurture more than war. Snow rattled the shutters of the Red Keep's solar as Arya and Tyrion pushed through the oak-framed door, stamping white powder from their boots. The hearthstones were hot enough to crack, the air perfumed with mulled wine and rosemary-laced smoke. Grayscale shadows danced along the walls, illuminating the charter scroll spread across a broad cedar table, where Lulaquo bent, quill poised like a raven's beak. She looked up as they entered, her dark eyes reflecting firelight and curiosity in equal measure. Grey Worm waited in stillness beside her, hands clasped at the small of his back, every inch a living sentinel. Outside, bells tolled a steady rhythm. 3 strikes to mark the closing of the city gates, 1 to honor the dead in the bell tower fire. And the sound dimmed as the thick door fell shut behind them. Tyrion made straight for the silver flagon near the fire, filling 2 goblets. He pressed one into Arya's hand and gestured to the cushioned bench. Sit, he muttered, before wine turns to ice. Arya curled onto the bench, elbows resting on her knees, fingers wrapped around the goblet's stem. The spiced heat crept up her arms, pricking skin thawed from bitter wind. Lulaquo crossed to them, parchment in hand, while Grey Worm resumed his quiet post. The ink is scarcely dry. She said, holding the document. So the seal caught the flames. But the Concord is already more fragile than a dragon's egg on cobblestones. Word from the docks. Braavosi nerves are as tender as their purses, Tyrion replied, swallowing a gulp. Once tariffs fall, they will come sniffing like hounds at a butcher's door. Assuming tariffs do fall, Lulaquo countered. Daenerys signed reluctantly. She may yet retract if provoked again. Arya studied the woman's steady face and wondered how many unseen fires she smothered each day. Where do we stand? She asked. In limbo, Lulaquo said. The Queen convenes her first Council of Thrones after the new moon. Sansa rides south. Edmure with her, Lord Robin of the Vale, despite his maester's objections, and the Princess of Dorne traveling by sea. They must all arrive alive, and willing to negotiate, not bite throats before the ink thickens. Grey Worm spoke then, his voice a stone gliding across still water. Your presence steadies the queen. Remain until council concludes. Tyrion sighed, cheeks red from fireside glow. Our wolf here barely tolerates walls. I would not chain her longer than she allows. Arya tipped the goblet to her lips, letting cloves and citrus burn her tongue. I stay until winter passes, she said, eyes on the flames. After that, my road runs where it wills. Dawn broke sullen and slate-colored over King's Landing. The plaza still stank of smoke, and charred timbers jutted like broken ribs from the bell tower's carcass. Yet stonemasons already labored beneath tarpaulins, their hammers rewriting the skyline. Arya perched atop a scaffold, feet dangling, while Jon and Grey Worm directed work below. The former Night's Watch commander looked every inch a king who refused his crown, hair wind-tossed, cheeks rough with stubble, eyes fixed on people rather than power. How long before the tower stands again? He asked the foreman. 3 moons if frost stays at bay, my lord, the broad-shouldered mason answered. Half that with more hands. Double their wages, Jon ordered. Steel from the royal stores and timber from Storm's End. Tell the small folk this tower is theirs, not ours. Let them see it rise. Grey Worm nodded silent approval. Arya watched the exchange, remembering a boy in Winterfell who once dreamed of silent forests and ancient oaths. Now he spoke like a man who bore the bitter lessons of kingship without craving the throne's reward. She climbed down, boots gripping the beam. Jon greeted her with a ghost of a smile. We fly banners of peace, he said, nodding to artisans painting a white direwolf beside a black dragon on fresh plaster. But peace is a house that needs constant patching. You should be a builder, Arya teased. Or perhaps a septon. You speak like one. He chuckled, breath turning to vapor. Gods help us if I preach. Come, walk the wall. They scaled the outer battlements, where new forged shields of Targaryen, red interlaced with stark gray. From here, the city spread in layered streets and steaming chimneys, its rattle of life muffled by drifting snow. Yet in markets carts rattled again, and fishermen sang as they mended nets. Children dashed in circles, pelting each other with snow-packed mud. It struck Arya how swiftly life asserted itself after horror, like spring buds piercing storm-hardened soil. Daenerys plans a school within the Sept's restored wing, Jon said. She asked me to teach sword forms. Show small folk war can defend, not only destroy. Arya raised an eyebrow. You? Teaching? He shrugged. I learned from the best, you among them. Wind tugged her hair, but warmth flickered beneath her ribs. She hadn't expected the compliment to matter, yet it did. They walked until horns sounded at the port below. 3 rising notes that carried across roofs like gull cries. A ship from Gulltown, Jon observed. Sansa's convoy. Arya's pulse quickened. The council's first arrivals would test the Concord's fragile promise. She pictured her sister wrapped in white fur, blue eyes assessing every crack in this uneasy alliance. Sansa wielded diplomacy the way Arya wielded steel, needlepoint precise. The procession entered the city through the Dragon Gate, 3 hours past midday. Sansa rode at its head, flanked by Lord Glover and Lady Karstark, a dozen northern spears behind. Her cloak was fox-trimmed, the chain at her throat hammered into triple-headed wolf heads. One for Robb lost to knives, one for Bran lost to time, one for Arya returned. Beside her trotted a proud chestnut stallion bearing Edmure Tully, face weathered by captivity but eyes still bright. Behind them clattered a carriage glazed in sun-yellow glass, the Vale's gift to their ailing lord who peeked through curtains like an owl blinking daylight. Crowds gathered yet kept respectful distance. News of the Concord had softened scorn, but memory of Dragonfire lay thick. Sansa dismounted beneath the Red Keep archway where Daenerys awaited in black wool, trimmed with silver. 2 queens appraised each other across the courtyard stones, one crowned by northern snow, the other by dragon flame. Arya slipped to flank her sister, needle hidden yet heartbeat quick. Lady Stark, Daenerys greeted, voice measured. Your Grace, Sansa returned, no hint of curtsy. Thank you for your invitation. Daenerys gestured inside. The council chamber is prepared. They moved through vaulting halls where artisans chiseled new friezes. Wolves and roses, krakens and fish, sun spears and dragons intertwined. It felt both ancient and newborn, like a tapestry unrolled onto untested frames. Inside the refurbished small council chamber, chairs had been replaced by a wide circular dais carved of interlocking woods: ironwood, weirwood, ebony, cedar. No single seat rose higher than another. When Sansa saw the circle, her lips quirked. "Even furniture makes statements," she murmured near Arya's ear. "At least no one fights for the end of the table," Arya whispered back. The council convened at dusk. Torches burned orange and blue, their scents of pine pitch mixing with the faint salt of sea breezes threading high windows. The Princess of Dorne, Maris Nameros, arrived robed in desert crimson, her escort carrying spears tipped with glassy black obsidian. From the Reach came Lady Eleanor Graceford, olive skin flushed from winter's bite, her father's sigil of the white cornucopia embroidered in jade thread. The Ironborn sailed upriver, anchored, and strode into the hall dripping seawater, salt-rusted axes slung harmlessly at belts. Their spokesman was Jorah Pike, nephew to the late Euron, bearing a letter from Queen Yara promising cooperation in exchange for recognized sea borders. Jon called the meeting to order. Daenerys yielded the floor immediately, an act that startled many but signaled her intent to share power. Tyrion stood atop a box so his voice could carry and read the Concord aloud. 37 articles governing levy proportions, succession rights, port duties, mutual defense, and the election of a high steward to mediate disputes. Each delegate spoke in turn. Arguments flared, Dorne insisting on full coinage rights, the Reach bargaining down levy percentages, Ironborn bristling at restrictions on reaving outside war. Yet whenever tempers climbed, Arya saw Jon's calm presence ground the room, and Sansa's measured logic weave compromise. Lulaco's quill scratched, capturing amendments. The session ran to moonrise. They adjourned only when servants wheeled in cider and honeyed parsnips to stave off fainting. In corridors outside, Arya leaned against frost-chilled stone, watching lords and ladies peel away in murmuring knots. Tyrion approached, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Would that battlefield negotiations ended so civilly," he muttered. "But it's movement. Movement can be a stumble," Arya warned. He grinned wryly. Ever the pessimist. Realist. Her gaze tracked Jorah Pike, disappearing down a stairwell, flanked by 2 grim Ironborn. "They play nice, but salt tastes of blood. Then we keep watch." Watch she did. Over the following week, Arya roamed ramparts and undercity alike, ears attuned to rumor. Smuggled weapons caches in the wine cellars beneath the Guildhall of Chandlers, red hand graffiti blooming again in Blackwater alleys, whispers of mercenaries from Essos disguised as peddlers. She followed one such rumor to the Ragman's Round, where a pale swordsman practiced footwork with broken bottles for markers. He bore a Braavosi tattoo at the jawline, spiraled like a shell. Arya recognized the mark of the Titan's bastards, a free company famed for assassination. She returned after dark, tailing him through labyrinthine courts, until he entered a tavern cellar used by fishmongers. Inside she found a roll of parchment instructing Crescent Night falls upon the wolf. Which wolf? She couldn't know. She carried the parchment to Jon, who read it, jaw clenching. "We must increase guard," he said. "If they strike a delegate, the council shatters." Grey Worm appointed unsullied shadows for every regional leader, though proud houses bristled. Arya took personal charge of Sansa's safety, though her sister protested. "I am not a child clutching skirts," Sansa snapped while changing gowns before a council banquet. "No," Arya answered, adjusting the dagger at her belt. "But you are a target wearing fox fur in a city of hounds." Sansa's glare thawed into resigned gratitude. "Very well. Stand close. Just do not hover like a mother hen. I'm a wolf, remember." Arya smiled. The banquet was a swirl of color. Harpists played Dornish airs. Trays bore roasted duck, laced with orange, spiced persimmons, blackberry wine. Laughter rose, fragile but genuine as ice fractals on glass. Daenerys circulated arm in arm with Lulaquo, greeting each noble. When she reached Sansa, the two exchanged polite remarks about harvest returns, yet Arya sensed tension beneath the smiles. Midway through the feast, a muffled pop cracked from the gallery. Torches guttered. Dancers froze. Arya's hand found the hilt of needle as silhouettes moved along rafters, 5 shapes swinging down on silk cords, each masked, blades glinting. Panic erupted. The Ironborn hurled mugs, Dornish spears lowered. Arya vaulted onto the banquet table, scattering platters, and met the first attacker mid-lunge. Steel rang out. She twisted, driving her dagger into the thin gap beneath his arm. Blood sprayed across poached pears. Another assailant landed before Sansa. Saber whistling. Arya slid across the table's length, carving through candelabras, to intercept. Their blades clashed, sparks flying. The masked killer pressed with surprising strength, yet Arya flowed like water, pivoting to let momentum carry his stroke wide. She drove the pommel into his throat. He gagged, dropped. At the dais Grey Worm dispatched 2 more with precise thrusts, while Jon shielded Daenerys from stray arrows cutting from an upper window. Tyrion ducked beneath the table, dragging Edmure with him. The last assassin, seeing mission failed, hurled a glass sphere that shattered in green sizzle, wildfire again. But Arya kicked a silver platter that intercepted the majority of liquid, deflecting sparks to a stone wall where it flashed harmless. Guards swarmed. Moments later, silence and smoke curled above toppled dishes, the scent of burning citrus hanging like sick perfume. Daenerys strode to the center, fury tight-leashed. She ripped the mask from one fallen attacker, revealing Braavosi features, drilled with Titan shell tattoo. "Essos again," she hissed. "Paid by whom?" Gerard Pike raised both hands defensively. "Not the Ironborn. Our coin lines our ships, not cutthroats." Lady Graceford swore she'd never seen the man. Princess Maris inspected the tattoo, whispering to Lulaquo about Braavosi guild ties. Tyrion climbed onto a chair, face pale. Wherever blame lies, blood was spilled. The Concord staggers. Then? Sansa knelt to the injured assassin, still breathing shallowly. She pressed steel to his throat. "Who?" "Speak, and die, quick." The man coughed scarlet, eyes hard. "The Crescent Knight hails, the lioness abroad." He wheezed once and went still. "A lioness," Jon repeated, frown deepening. "Cersei?" Impossible, Arya thought. Yet memory of Cersei's exile to Lys stirred unease. Could her supporters act without her knowledge? Or had she regained influence among Essosi sellswords? They needed answers fast, lest suspicion unravel fragile unity. Daenerys convened an emergency council at midnight. Diplomats demanded proof the Queen controlled her city. Some threatened to depart come dawn. Sansa argued stability served every region, dwarfed by threat of war. Edmure pledged river-run grain shipments to quell starved bellies. But Ironborn threatened blockade unless reaving restrictions eased. Discord frayed the air. Arya listened from shadows. When debate spiraled toward dissolution, she stepped into torchlight. If the council breaks, the assassins win. The Concord dies, and we begin counting graves again. Give me 7 days. I will sail to Lys, bring Cersei before you, and drag her conspirators into daylight. Prove guilt or innocence. Nenerbamawal. Jon objected. Too dangerous. I've hunted in darker woods, Arya replied. Daenerys' face tightened. She may intend to lure you. Essos teams with knives paid by old grievances. Arya smiled thinly. Let them come. I still have room on my list. A hush followed, respect mixing with worry. Sansa reached for Arya's forearm. I will not lose you to another continent. You won't, Arya said softer. But the Concord needs truth more than it needs me at your elbow. Grey Worm volunteered an unsullied cohort, but Arya refused. Too many soldiers invite war. I need stealth. She accepted only Gendry Rivers, now Baratheon Lord of Storm's End, who had arrived that day with smiths to reinforce city gates and whose hammer arm made a silent promise beside her. Together they planned swift passage on a covert galley captained by Davos Seaworth, newly summoned for precisely such tasks. The council voted, narrow margin. Arya's mission approved. 7 dawns, no more. If she failed, Daenerys vowed to send the fleet and smoke out conspirators by force. Moonlight dappled the black water as Davos' galley slipped anchor. Arya stood at prow, wind slicing her braid. Gendry secured rigging, muscles flexing beneath a borrowed leather jerkin, embossed with a stag. Davos joined her. Sea rolls rocking underfoot. Could be a trap, he muttered. Lice ain't friendly to northern noses. Traps are easier to spring when you walk into them, she said. Harder when you crawl under. Davos grinned uncertainly. I trust you're crawling. Still, keep blade close. Bendero. The voyage south crossed churning winter seas. Gales ripped sails, but Davos' crew patched canvas with deft fingers, songs booming into froth. Arya studied maps of Lys, memorizing alley networks, merchant houses rumored to shelter exiles. At night she sparred with Gendry beneath moon-washed deck planks, iron clanging like distant bells. The smith-turned-lord fought heavy but true. Each blow carved arcs of salt spray. They shared quiet smiles and exertion. And for a heartbeat Arya imagined a life beyond war. Forge fires. Children's laughter. But wind stole the vision. 4 days later, Lys Harbor gleamed under sunrise, pink stone villas cascading down terraced hills, canals glimmering with painted skiffs. Rumors of plague kept patrol eyes inland, docks half deserted, perfect for covert landing. Davos moored at a spice merchant slip he knew from smuggling years. Arya and Gendry shouldered sea-stained cloaks, descending into a warren of perfumed air and mosaic lanes. They posed as northern traders seeking saffron. Information came by wine bribes. A foreign noble renting the Rose Seraglio mansion, guarded by Braavosi toughs. Shipments of Myrish rugs delivered nightly. Whispers of public orphan kitchens funded anonymously. Arya knew the scent of paradox. Cersei haunted guilt, yet kindness found purchase. The trail led uphill to a lush garden walled in pomegranate trees. She scaled brick under Moon's scythe, dropped inside, motioning Gendry to cover the gate. Between rose lattices she glimpsed silken lanterns swaying, and beyond them a woman seated beside a marble pool. Gold hair gone silver at roots, face slimmer, yet unmistakably Cersei. She read from a ledger, quill dipping into ink. 2 guards lounged nearby, curved swords idle. Arya crept closer. Heart staccato but mind cool. She recalled words spoken in King's Landing of atonement and ghosts. Was this queen a mastermind of new murder? Or target of someone else's scheme? Stepping from shadow, Arya let lamplight reveal her. Cersei's eyes lifted, widened, then steadied. She set the quill aside. I wondered how long before wolves found me, she said, voice softer, tinged with sea winds. Sit, if you're here to talk. Arya remained standing. Assassins bearing Braavosi marks tried to kill the council. They named a lioness abroad. Cersei's smile was rueful. I have surrendered that sigil. These men are not mine. I spend gold on grain for orphans, not blades. Words, Arya said. Proof. Cersei gestured to the ledger. Accounts. Shipments. Cook's wages. Lyseni tithes. My only armed men defend these walls from slavers who believe an exiled queen fetches ransom. Dandero. Arya glanced to the guards, who eyed her warily but made no move. If not you, then who? Cersei exhaled bleak amusement. Lannister gold spawns vultures. Perhaps distant cousins or disgraced knights seeking glory. My brother's dwarf skull still fetches coin. Why not my name? Footsteps scrunched gravel. Gendry appeared, hammer raised at the ready. Cersei's guard stiffened, but didn't draw. Tension coiled. Arya raised a hand. Then come back, she said to Cersei. Clear your name before the Concord collapses. Cersei's gaze flicked to the night sky, as though measuring distant ghosts. Return to chains? I broke once, Arya. I will not kneel again. No chains. A seat in truth. Testify, reveal conspirators, then exile anew if you wish. One guard stepped forward. My lady owes nothing. Cersei silenced him. She studied Arya's face, weighing sincerity against memory of daggers. Finally she stood. If I refuse, the war you fear will burn thousands. I learned the cost of stubborn pride. She nodded. 3 days to settle affairs. Then I sail under truce. Then, back aboard Davos galley, Arya paced sea spray rails. Do we trust her? Gendry asked. Trust is luxury, she answered. We guard her well. They escorted Cersei through storm-tossed passages north. During long nights, Arya found her by stern rail, hair whipping silver across lined cheeks. They spoke little. Yet once, Cersei offered a shy question. Your father, did he ever fear his honor would break his children? Arya considered. He feared little except failing us. Honor didn't break us. The world did. Does honor mend? Cersei asked. Sometimes, Arya said. If you let it. Cersei stared into black waves. She said no more, but her shoulders eased a fraction. They reached King's Landing at dawn of the 7th day. Horns cried as the galley docked, unsullied surrounded the pier, heavy with anticipation. Daenerys awaited atop the harbor steps, cloak snapping. Crowds crowded her rooftops to glimpse the exiled queen's return. When Cersei appeared, some hissed, others merely stared, uncertain whether to fear or pity. She walked tall, yet unadorned, palms open, surrendering a small dagger to Grey Worm without urging. Inside the council chamber, Arya stood between Sansa and Jon. Delegates leaned forward, eyes hungry. Daenerys' tone was blade thin. Cersei of House Lannister, do you deny ordering the Crescent Knight? I do, Cersei answered, voice clear. I renounced bloodshed the day I left these shores. She produced ledgers, vouchers, Lyseni witnesses. Lula Quo scrutinized the signatures under torchlight, nodding slowly. Tyrion, sorrow mingling hope, questioned her for hours. Holes appeared in her accounts, stretches of unaccounted coin, but amounts too small for mercenary pay. Then Princess Maris whispered in Lulaquo's ear. The Summer Islander frowned, consulted her notes, and spoke. The Red Hand assassins were paid not in gold, but in saffron, rare this winter. The spice passes through Dorne. A merchant vessel reported hijacked by corsairs, bearing Reach accents. All faces shifted to Lady Graceford. She rose, confusion etched on brow. I authorized no such hijack. But her cousin, young Sir Tylan, gulped visibly. Eyes turned. Sweat beaded his temples. Sansa's voice sliced the hush. Sir Tylan? Speak true. The knight faltered, then confessed. He'd conspired with displaced Tyrell bannermen, desperate to exact vengeance upon both dragon and lion for Highgarden's ruin. They bargained through Braavosi intermediaries, promising to sow chaos and dissolve the Concord, paving path for Reach independence. Daenerys' eyes smoldered. Treason on the blade's edge of peace. Yet Jon intervened. Slaughter him, and more will rise. Let the council judge. Delegates deliberated under watched guard. At dawn they issued verdict. Sir Tylan condemned to labor rebuilding every city scalded by war. First King's Landing, then Old Town's burned docks. His co-conspirators stripped of lands, but spared if they swore to supply grain free for 2 winters. Harsh yet measured, a sentence forged by many hands, not fire. And the council, rather than falter, strengthened. For in confronting betrayal united, they tested the Concord's spine and found it resilient. Cersei, her innocence proven, declined Daenerys' offer of safe court lodging. Instead, she asked to sail under Stark escort to Dragonstone, to oversee orphan kitchens there before winter cut sea lanes. Sansa agreed on one condition, that all accounts of relief flow through council auditors. Cersei acquiesced, a hint of gratitude flickering. When the meeting adjourned, delegates lingered not in haste, but discussion of canal dredging, of tax relief, of shared patrols against stepstone piracy. Arya watched, exhausted, as words once sharp now stitched seams. That night, she climbed the battlements with Jon and Sansa. Snowflakes glittered in torch glow. Below, laughter drifted from barracks, where northern and Dornish guards rolled dice. Beyond walls, fishermen's lamps bobbed gentle on ink water. "It may hold," Jon murmured. "A fragile thing, but living." Sansa breathed out pale mist. Peacemakers rarely claim songs, yet songs may be written, all the same. Arya leaned on the cold stone. "When spring comes, I will go west. Not to run, but to map unknown waters. Bring back stories, maybe trade routes. The realm might need horizons wider than these bloody shores." Sansa smiled, eyes shimmering. "Then sail, little sister. And write me every fortnight." "Ben?" Jon clasped Arya's forearm. "You saved us more than once. The world may not know, but I do." Footsteps echoed behind. Gendry approached, a small box in hand. He opened it to reveal a circlet forged of dark iron swirling into petals, winter roses, tempered, but not brittle. "When you cross oceans," he said, words rough, "carry this. A lord should gift more, but—" Arya lifted it out, weight surprising. "I carry steel enough, but I'll keep this." She kissed his cheek, quick, before winter wind claimed warmth. Gendry flushed scarlet, retreating with a grin. Stars brightened overhead. From the rebuilt bell tower, new bells rang clear, their notes mingling dire wolf and dragon motifs. A melody tentative, hopeful. Arya closed her eyes, breathing iron and snow, and the faint ash of old wars. Somewhere in the city, orphans tasted fresh bread baked in stoves funded by a penitent lioness. In the harbor, Braavosi grain ships unloaded under lanterns, strung like constellations. On the horizon, dark waves waited, invitation and warning together. She opened her eyes. "The night is cold," she said, stepping back from the parapet. "But there's fire enough inside." They descended, 3 Starks where once so few remained, their shadows stitching across flagstones mended from ruin. And though winter clenched the city in icy fists, seeds of spring slept beneath, coiled with stubborn promise that some hearts could bend without breaking, and from their bending, build a realm where wolves and dragons might one day share the same sky, unafraid. They left the parapet together, but all 3 understood they were walking toward different horizons. Snowflakes swirled between torches, disintegrating on warm lamplight that spilled from arrow-slit windows. Below, the Red Keep's courtyards thrummed. Forge fires clanged, scribes hurried with waxed tablets, and somewhere in a side garden the sharp, joyous peal of children's laughter drifted. Orphans now housed in chambers once reserved for Lannister pageantry. The contrast felt like a heartbeat resounding beneath the city's stone skin. Proof that even in winter, something new could take root. Arya slept little that night. She sat at a small table near the window of her guest room, sharpening needle while moonlight silvered the blade. Every rasp of whetstone felt like setting her life in order. Here the edge of vengeance honed, there the shadow of childhood polished away. No list remained to guide her, only possibility, and possibility felt vaster and stranger than any map the Citadel had inked. At dawn, she descended to the restored kitchens, claimed a heel of barley bread, and watched the first rays of sunlight burnish the frost-shrouded courtyard. Davos Seaworth waited by the stables, stamping his feet against the cold cloak drawn tight. He greeted her with a nod, then led her to the dock where his newly christened galley, the Night Wolf, rode low in the harbor swells. Gendry and a skeleton crew he had gathered from Storm's End shipped final crates aboard. Flasks of hard cider, coils of tarred rope, parcels of vellum for whatever notes and sketches Arya might make beyond the western sea. She felt Sansa's presence before hearing her. Soft bootsteps crunched behind. The familiar scent of ashwood and northern herbs drifted. Arya turned to find her sister standing alone beneath an archway, fox fur collar hugging pale cheeks, blue eyes bright with unshed tears she refused to let fall. "I came to see you off," Sansa said, voice steady. "And to give you something." From within her cloak, she produced a thin journal bound in white leather, the Stark direwolf embossed in silver on the cover. "So you can record the realms no one else has ever seen." Sansa continued, pressing it into Arya's hands. "If you decide to return, I want those stories. If you do not—" Her words faltered. "Then let this book prove you were real and brave and ours." Arya swallowed, feeling the weight of memory heavier than any steel. She tucked the journal into her belt, then reached out and drew Sansa into a fierce embrace. Gone was the girl who had once envied silks and songs. In Arya's arms stood a woman of mountain-rooted strength, as integral to the north as snowmelt. "We will see each other again," Arya whispered. Sansa pulled back, wiping one cheek with an indignant flick. "Make sure of it." "I loathe waiting." Gendry approached, rolling shoulders inside a waxed cloak. Smith's muscles strained the seams. Excitement and worry warred in his eyes. "Wind's shifting," he called. "We should set off before it turns." Sansa nodded at him, an unspoken request to guard what she cherished most. Gendry touched 2 fingers to brow. Half salute, half oath. Then Arya strode up the gangplank, heart thrumming like rigging rope in gusts. Jon arrived last, steps heavy on the planks. He said nothing at first, only placed a hand on her shoulder, gaze sweeping the still pink horizon. "Then, when I joined the Watch, I thought the Wall was the end of the world. You're sailing to prove I was wrong again." "Maybe. I'll find the real edge," Arya answered. "And I'll carve." Jon was here on a rock so big the gods can read it. He managed a grin that bared grief and pride in equal measure. "Fair winds, little sister." The gangplank withdrew. Ropes slapped water. Sails cracked open to catch a northeast gust that carried faint scent of pine from distant Storm's End. As the Nightwolf prow sliced through pale waves, Arya stayed at the stern until the city's battlements shrank to crooked shadows. She watched sunlight flare on the rebuilt bell tower, saw it glint off the scales of Drogon circling high like a silent sentry, and allowed herself one deep breath of mingled fear and exhilaration. The eastern horizon still bore bruises of winter storm, yet the western horizon stretched unblemished, misty blue arcing into promise. She turned her back on the known world and felt something inside unfurl. A sail catching wind for the first time. Days at sea became their own quiet rhythm. Davos' crew hailed from Tarth, the Arbor, even a Lyseni deserter who owed Arya his life after the council assassins were unmasked. They spoke a babble of dialects, but trust grew quickly. Gendry spent daylight hours reinforcing railings, hammer ringing against the ocean's pulse. Arya kept the ship's log, latitude by sun shadow, notes on seabird patterns, sketches of cloud banks shaped like rampaging mammoths. When the wind slept and the ship drifted, she practiced water dancing forms along the narrow quarterdeck, balance razor sharp despite rolling swells. At night she pored over maps long dismissed as sailor legends, inked by traders who claimed a chain of glimmering isles lay far to the southwest, or that the sunset sea curved into a gulf fringed by jungles larger than the Reach. She tried not to hope for dragons. The world already possessed enough fire. On the 25th day, gulls vanished. Water shifted from brown-green to pellucid sapphire, then to a deep violet under moonlight that left the surface glassy. Davos frowned at the empty sky. "We're past every fishing ground I know," he muttered, scanning the horizon. "Even the whales avoid these parts." Gendry eased beside him, wiping sweat. "Currents feel strange, like the seas pulling us rather than pushing." Arya stood at the prow, hair whipping. She sensed it too, a subtle drag beneath the keel, as though the Nightwolf sailed across a giant, slow heartbeat. But the weather held fair, and provisions lasted. They pressed on. 2 dawns later, banked storm clouds rose behind them, black like a wall of ash. Davos ordered sails reefed, crew lashed to rigging. Wind shifted from east to north, slicing cold and thin. Lightning crackled in the distant mass, but rain held off. Instead, a silence heavier than any tempest enveloped them. It was the hush of a world holding breath. That night, Arya dreamed of the weirwoods, their faces weeping red sap that flowed into an ocean of black glass. A pale figure walked upon the surface, leaving footprints that glowed silver. She followed until he turned. Bran, eyes white, yet in his gaze bloomed horizons of stars. He lifted an arm toward the west, and the ocean parted into a chasm of light. She woke, heart pounding, just as a lookout cried from the masthead. Land. Land to starboard. Ben? She scrambled onto the forecastle. Faint in dawn, gloom shimmered a serrated silhouette. Cliffs jagged as dragon teeth, their peaks wrapped in tattered mist. At their base, a thin crescent of sand shone lily-pale. No markers of civilization, no beacon fires, no rotted jetty, just raw stone and surf. Davos guided them into a natural cove, where water turned turquoise over coral ridges. The Nightwolf anchored. Longboats splashed down. Arya, Gendry, and 6 sailors rowed ashore. The beach smelled of unfamiliar blossoms, honey-sweet edged with pepper. Sand grains gleamed like crushed pearl. Behind the beach, rainforest surged. Enormous ferns unfurled beneath towering trees whose bark glimmered silver beneath vines heavy with sapphire flowers. Arya stepped onto sand. Something inside her stilled. The same hush as when she first set foot in Braavos, tinged with awe and caution. She knelt to scoop a palmful of sand. The grains chimed softly, as though infused with crystal. She pocketed a sample for Sansa's journal. Gendry hefted his hammer. No footprints. Untouched. Not for long, Arya said. They advanced into the forest. Birds shrieked overhead, brassy notes different from any Westerosi warbles. Butterflies the size of a child's hand fluttered in indigo swarms. The air dripped humidity, but a cool undercurrent slid beneath, as if water poured through stone caverns deep below. They found a stream flowing so clear it seemed invisible, save for light bending through. At a bend, Arya paused. The moss on a tree trunk bore fresh gouges, parallel lines the length of her forearm, deep and precise. Claw marks. Gendry spotted another set higher up. Spaced wider. Something large and arboreal roamed here. She signaled silence. They pressed deeper, blades unsheathed. Beyond a curtain of leaves, the forest opened onto an amphitheater of basalt columns, forming a near-perfect circle. In its center, a pool mirrored the sky, bordered by low plinths carved in spiraling runes. Arya approached the nearest plinth, tracing a symbol. 3 nested circles, each marked with radiating lines. She felt faint warmth thrumming. Neither Valyrian glyphs nor runes of the First Men. This language lay older, stranger. Davos whispered, "Ah." He pointed to the far rim where stone stairs climbed into a cleft in the cliff. Above the cleft, water cascaded thin as silk, catching sunlight into prisms that danced across carvings. The entire site hummed with intention, as if built as a conduit between earth and sky. Arya's pulse quickened. She remembered tales old Nan muttered, of a people beyond the sunset sea, children of starlight who shaped stone with song. Nonsense, she had thought. Yet here, in the hush of uncharted jungle, nonsense felt closer to truth than any maester's scroll. They camped at the pool's edge. Gendry tinkered with flint but discovered the basalt catchstones sparked green rather than orange, their glow lingering like wildfire. They sheathed flint, wary of unintended fires, and instead roasted saltfish over low coals from driftwood. Night fell swift. Constellations blazed brilliant, unfamiliar shapes. Dragons looped in patterns she'd never seen. A wolf of 7 stars bounding after a comet-tailed deer. Arya made sketch after sketch, noting that the sky itself wrote new stories here. At moonrise, a mournful wail floated through jungle, neither bird nor beast, but something in between. Crew drew daggers. The wail returned, closer. Leaves rustled overhead, Branches dipped under unseen weight. Arya stood, scanning shadows. Gendry placed his back to hers, hammer poised. Then a shape emerged, a feline silhouette twice the length of a lion, ghost white with spots like moon shadow. Its eyes were silver, pupils ringed with pale gold. It paused at the pool, regarding them with inscrutable calm. Arya lowered her blade slowly, recalling Maester Luwin's description of the Shadowcats rumored beyond the Shivering Sea. No Westerosi hunter had captured one. This creature moved with the same grace, but bore antler-like appendages swept back from its skull, crystalline at the tips. It bent to drink. The pool flickered as glyphs beneath water's surface pulsed, lighting the cat's fur in numinous halos. Davos whispered, "Old gods preserve us." The feline finished drinking, fixed Arya with luminous gaze, then melted back into jungle. Silence returned, but the crew slept poorly, hearts rattling like loose shields. Morning brought exploration of the cliff stairs. They ascended single file, boots slick on moss. At the top, they discovered a gallery carved into the rock face, statues of robed figures whose faces were polished smooth, featureless. One statue held an oblong orb, sculpted with swirling continents unlike any map. Arya touched the orb. A faint tremor vibrated through her bones, echoing the tune of the pool runes. "No sign of habitation," Gendry noted. "Who tends these statues?" "Time itself," Davos muttered. The gallery ended at a sealed doorway, two crescent slabs meeting at a central seam. Each crescent bore runes identical to those on beach sand. Arya pressed a palm. Warmth surged. The slabs rumbled apart, unveiling a chamber luminous with pale stones embedded in walls, casting no shadows. In its center lay a dais supporting a crystal cylinder within which floated a map sphere spinning slowly. The continents drifted like reflections on water, rearranging with each rotation. Essos expanded until it bridged to Sothorios. Westeros split into archipelagos. Far western land masses appeared, vanished, reappeared in new configurations. It was a map of deep time. A hush settled so profound Arya heard her own pulse tick. Humanity was a late breath upon such vistas. She realized this chamber must predate Valyria, the first men, perhaps even the children of the forest. It belonged to dreamers who dared press beyond known coasts and encoded their knowledge here. "Waiting," Gendry whispered, reverence threading his rough voice. "What do we do with this?" Arya thought of Sansa's journal, of Jon's hope to teach swords as shields, of Daenerys' fragile peace. She pictured maesters copying these sites, shaping new alliances through wonder rather than fear. Knowledge was scarier than dragons, and kinder. "We learn," she said. "We record. Then we decide who is wise enough to share." For 3 days they transcribed runes, traced star charts lit across the ceiling, measured echoing hallways that spiraled deeper yet remained pristine, as if time held no dominion here. On the final evening, Arya dreamed again of Bran. This time he spoke without moving lips. "The world is a book half-written. Fill the rest, little sister." She woke before dawn, resolution burning. By first light, they sealed the chamber, covering footprints, erasing camp traces. The Shadowcat watched from the pool's edge, silent sentinel, then paced away as if approving departure. Back aboard Nightwolf, Arya unrolled the first page of Sansa's journal and began writing. "We found a shore of silver bark and living stone. The stars wore new shapes here. The voyage home turned perilous. Squalls hammered them northward. Once a waterspout spun so close the mast creaked like a dying giant. But the crew's hearts were buoyed by discovery. They debated what the runes foretold. Some swore they glimpsed shapes of dragons coiled beneath continents. Others claimed the statues lacked faces because identity threatened unity. Arya listened, recording every speculation. Gendry approached her one starlit night, calloused hand brushing hers atop the rail. "When we dock, I'll ask the Queen for funds to build ships fit for longer journeys. Ironwood hulls, reinforced ribs. Will you captain one? Then, perhaps," she said. "But first I must hand this to the council." She tapped the journal. Then eat something not salted. He laughed softly. I will hold you to a feast of fresh bread and rabbit stew at Storm's End. Bring your scrolls, we'll spread them across the high table. Try stopping me. They embraced briefly, awkward, tentative, and parted before the crew could grin. Landfall came at dusk, gull cries welcoming them to Blackwater Bay. Fires burned along quays. Word of their arrival had raced faster than gulls. Jon awaited, cloak snapping, Sansa beside him, Daenerys a pace behind with Lulaquo and Tyrion. When Arya leapt to the pier, Sansa hugged her so fiercely the journal pressed between them. Jon squeezed her shoulder, eyes shining with questions he tamped down for privacy. Daenerys studied Arya's face, reading truths beyond words. Inside the throne room, Arya spread charcoal rubbings of runes, star charts, sketches of statue and feline, descriptions of the map sphere. The council crowded close. Maesters in grey, Dornish astrologers murmuring, even Grey Worm tilting his head, curiosity glinting. Tyrion traced a rune spiral. If we decipher this, we rewrite every history scroll in Old Town. Awe cracked his voice. Sansa read Arya's flowing script aloud. They walked upon continents that shifted under heaven's wheel. They plucked stars to guide them. They left steps of silver for those who dared follow. She looked up, eyes wet. It's beautiful. Daenerys approached Arya. You prove there is more beyond the edge than empty sea. You return to share, not conquer. She bowed her head, not as queen, but as one dreamer honoring another. What do you wish in return? Guard this knowledge, Arya said. Do not turn it to war. Let every region send scholars, not soldiers. Build ships for trade, hospitals for plague. Let orphan children grow to sail and see wonders before lifting swords. Silence rippled. A covenant weighed. Jon stepped beside his sister. We have fought too many wars for thrones. Let this be a war for learning with no bloodshed. Sansa set her hand on the journal. I propose a new order, the Fellowship of Horizon. Representatives from each realm, dedicated to exploration and healing. Arya Stark should hold its first seat. Menachau. Agreement murmured. Only the Ironborn balked. Sailing unmapped oceans risked ships. Yet when Gerard Pike saw the rubbings of star charts promising galleys able to navigate by celestial alignments, his eyes gleamed with opportunity. The council voted, unanimous. Save Ironborn abstention turned to reluctant eye. The Fellowship of Horizon was born. Seasons turned beneath the Concord's mantle. In the following spring, King's Landing's harbor bustled with mixed crews fitting sleek vessels. The first Horizon fleet launched with ceremonies where dragon and wolf banners fluttered side by side. Dorne sent a glass-blowing savant to craft lenses for star navigation. The Reach contributed botanists eager to catalog unknown flora. The North, under Sansa's patronage, funded rugged wool and ironwood crates to weather distant storms. Arya refused high titles, but her presence shaped the Fellowship's code. Share discoveries freely, claim no land by force, swear aid to any people encountered. Out beyond the Jade Gates, Lyseni merchants once laughed at such idealism, until they saw the Fellowship's combined fleet, equal parts warship and hospital, and realized this alliance was profitable as well as principled. In King's Landing, children attended the new Starfall School, built within the Sept's restored wing. They traced constellations on slate, while refugees from war studied healing under Dornish physicers. Bells rang not for warning now, but to signal classes. Carillon patterns that mirrored Arya's own notes of unknown bird calls from the Silverbark Island. Cersei, on Dragonstone, oversaw orphan kitchens and gradually surrendered leadership to locals. Letters came addressed not to a queen, but to a woman chronicling her attempts to plant Dornish oranges in volcanic soil, each letter ending with a single line. I pray my peace buys back a drop of blood I spill. Arya kept them in Sansa's journal, pages now thick with maps and charcoal sketches, and lines of poetry sailors composed under alien constellations. Gendry's Storm's End forges rang day and night, crafting sextants, anchor chains, and seed-studded plowshares. When Arya visited, they walked ramparts overlooking a roaring sea. Words unneeded. The wind carried their intent. One evening, high atop the repaired bell tower, Arya met Brondot. Ravens swirled around him, alighted along parapet. He smiled faintly. "I have seen the Silverbark Island through your eyes," he said. "Thank you for proving visions are not cages but doors." She touched his hand, cool, strong, despite stillness. "Come sail one day. I'll show you what lies even farther." "In time," Bran answered, gaze stretching into distances no mortal chart could hold. "For now, go farther still. The book's only half full." Then. 5 years later, a woman stood upon a beach of violet sand, where unbroken waves hissed beneath a sunset triple, the size of any in Westeros. She wore a wolf-head cloak bleached by sea salt and time, her hair silvered at the temples by spray. A sleek ship rode anchor, its prow carved into interlaced dragons and wolves. Sails dyed indigo. Children from a coastal village gathered behind her, clutching star-lily garlands to drape across the figure that crowned the shoreline. A cairn stacked by fellowship hands, inscribed in 4 tongues, reading simply, "Unity asks nothing but wonder." Arya Stark placed her fingers against the inscription, then turned to the horizon where new stars awaited mapping. Her saber glimmered at her side, a journal rested within waterproof oilcloth. Above, constellations unknown even to the old dreamers flickered into life. She lifted a horn, gave a single low call. The fellowship crew hauled lines, sails bellied. She walked through surf, climbed the ladder, and took her place at the wheel. As the ship eased into swell, villagers lit lanterns, tiny sparks mirroring the heavens. And somewhere, across oceans, in castles of stone and halls of glass alike, bells rang the horizon call, not as alarm, but as invitation. The prow cleaved silver water. Wind filled her lungs. Ahead lay nothing, until she reached it, and then it too would become part of the world, stitched into the living tapestry by ink and story, and the stubborn conviction that swords finally could be laid aside long enough for hands to build. And in that boundless hush between waves and stars, Arya Stark smiled into the wind, feeling on her face the breath of every wolf that ever howled for freedom and every dragon that ever dared the sky. The third sunrise painted the eastern edge of the world in molten copper, as Arya leaned over the teak rail and watched flying fish scatter ahead of the prow. Their silver arcs cut parabolas through air still cool from night, and each splash rang like a tiny bell in the hush before the crew fully roused. She pulled her wolf fur cloak tighter. It still bore the rich smell of Kaminari cedar sap, from an archipelago discovered the previous year, and glanced aloft where new pennants snapped. One pennant bore the wolf, one the dragon, and one a strand of starlight curling about an open book, the sigil adopted by the Fellowship of Horizon. Gendry emerged from the companionway, hair wind-tangled, a steaming tin of chicory brew in each hand. He passed one to Arya and joined her. They drank without speaking, content to listen to the creak of rigging and the faint murmur of sailors at their dawn tasks. Far behind, scattered lanterns on the horizon marked the other ships of Expedition Column Indigo. 3 caravels donated by the Iron Throne, 2 swift cogs from the Ironborn, their captain still marveling that reeving could become charting, and a broad-bellied hospital bark from Old Town, its decks lined with physic gardens. They had been out 38 days since raising sails at King's Landing. Their last known point, on established charts, lay behind them by more than 1,400 nautical leagues. Beyond this moment, the Night Wolf and her companions roamed pure conjecture. A blank parchment Arya meant to ink before returning, or perhaps never returning if the world opened wide enough. She and Gendry traded quiet remarks about the rigging tension, checked the barometer made by cohort glassmasters. The mercury had dropped, and watched the long swells deepen. Something vast stirred beneath the sea. The current flowed south to north, but the ship's log showed an unexplained westward slide as though unseen hands nudged them. A gull screeched overhead, startling both. No common gull had been spotted in weeks. Arya peered upward. The bird was unlike any shore scavenger she knew. Its wings were scythe-long, feathers banded white and jade, tail forked. It hovered once, gave a cry more flute than rasp, then wheeled west. 3 more followed in disciplined formation. "Scouts," Gendry muttered. "Lands near." "Or a ship," Arya replied, although merchant sails this far west seemed improbable. She gave orders for a taller lookout, and by mid-morning a call came from the main top, low shapes dead ahead, like stone spires rising straight from the water. Hours later, as the fleet hove to, everyone crowded rails to stare. The shapes were not islands. They were pillars of slick basalt, each as broad at base as Dragonstone's tower, tapering to knife points. Some leaned together, forming arches. Others stood solitary like sentries. Seafoam burst against their flanks, sending thunder into the bright air. Between the pillars, tide ripped fast through narrow channels. Arya conferred with the captains. Charts from the Silverbark Island hinted at a forest of stone guarding a sheltered sea beyond. If this was that forest, safe passage lay in the right channel. They studied the tidal patterns until midday. Then Arya chose a cleft whose eddies spun slower, banded green rather than ebony. Nightwolf advanced, crew braced. The basalt walls towered so high they blocked half the sun. Green light poured like liquid glass across the deck. In the gloom, barnacles big as shields clung to stone, and within water's slicks they glimpsed pale things coiling. Eels, or something stranger. The channel spat them into an inland sea calm as oil and ringed by golden cliffs. The moment they cleared the gap, wind died. The ocean's breath stilled, as though the world paused. Sails luffed slack, masts barely sighed. Each ship drifted, and into that silence rose a low choral hum, no distinct source, but everywhere at once, like 1,000 flutes played beneath water. Arya felt it in her bones rather than ears. The cliffs ahead broke at a single white sand beach gleaming under crystalline sky. Atop the bluffs stood ruins, ribs of marble, lintels carved in swirling loops, colonnades melted by time. Trees like columns of living jade grew among the stones, leaves a translucent teal. The hum deepened and faded, as though the ruins themselves exhaled. They launched longboats. The Fellowship's scholars, maesters, reach botanists, a Dothraki astronomer who had never before stepped aboard a ship, yet took to sea after glimpsing Arya's star maps, arrayed themselves with quills and satchels. Davos remained to command the flagship, while Arya led the shore party. As the longboat grounded, her boots sank into sand so fine it hissed. Every grain shimmered white and rose. They advanced inland. Immediately the air cooled, carrying scents of eucalyptus and salt-kissed pitch resin. Insects hummed high electric notes. Gendry stared wide-eyed at a butterfly whose wings bore patterns mimicking a weirwood face. The creature landed on his shoulder, fanned silent, and flitted away. Arya bent to study spiral shells half buried under sand. They were hollow glass, thin as dreams. At the cliff's base lay stairs carved directly into stone. The steps were enormous, each knee-high, necessitating climbing hands and feet. Scholars argued. Giants? But the rune motifs they recognized from Arya's Silverbark findings repeated along risers, albeit with different radial elements. They scaled. Atop the plateau, the ruins sprawled. Tall columns ringed a central court where a single tree stood, bark pale lavender, branches sprawling horizontally like an umbrella. From its twigs dangled hundreds of crystalline pods the size of goose eggs, each glowing faint blue. The hum heard at sea seemed to emanate here. Pods pulsed in waves, chords layered on chords, and as wind teased leaves, they chimed harmonic overtones. The scholars gasped. Maester Ronald declared it a living carillon. The Dothraki astronomer whispered that the sound matched frequencies of certain star clusters, measured with brazen horns. Arya stepped nearer. Within some pods, silhouettes drifted, tiny seed spirals, or perhaps insectoid larvae. She forbade collecting any pod until they understood. Beyond the carillon tree, paved avenues led to low-domed roofs indistinct with vines. They explored one hall. Smooth walls, no seams, entire chambers sculpted from single blocks of marble-like mineral, shot through with gold threads. On the floor, a mosaic depicted ships with sickle sails passing between fanged pillars that matched the basalt gate. Another mosaic showed a woman holding a sphere of light out to an assembly of kneeling figures, above whom hovered constellations. The sphere looked identical to the map globe in the Silverbark Sanctuary. So whoever built that place built this, and perhaps ringed the world in star academies. A Reach herbalist discovered troughs of dried petals beneath broken pergolas. He crushed some. Fragrance like lemon myrrh filled the air, reviving after uncounted centuries. Further on, they found a circular amphitheater. In its center, a dais of obsidian bore crystal tears set in patterns. Gendry traced one. It depressed like a button, and the entire dais lit, projecting light filaments into the air. Lines connected overhead, sketching the shape of the inland sea, marking islands, currents, then zooming outward to reveal their home continents as faint shadows on the far edge. Every witness fell silent, cartography wrought in light. The projection rotated, showing layers, ocean floors, volcanic vents, migrating shoals. Then it played forward as though forecasting tides. Crew scribes noted feverishly. The maester's pupils dilated like men glimpsing prophecy. The show ended, light vanished. Arya exhaled, realizing she had not breathed fully for minutes. These were schools, she said. Training explorers. One scholar countered, or temples. But Davos, second Mati, an old sailor named Pell, observed that the harbor's entrance, with trigging horns and tidal calls, had functioned as quarantine. They wanted visitors, but only those who listened. Arya collected rubbings, sketches, inscriptions. She kept one eye on the horizon. The basalt pillars might hide currents that could trap their fleet. And indeed, by dusk, the calm sea stirred with long, glassy swells that approached in threes, slapping hulls and dragging anchors. She ordered a watch left ashore, the ships repositioned deeper into the sheltered cove. Night fell. Warm, gentle breezes, moons, both the familiar and a faint pale companion often unseen in Westeros, rose high. During Arya's middle watch, a flicker on the plateau caught her eye. The Carillon tree glowed intense indigo. Pods burst one by one into swirling motes ascending skyward like sparks. Music like chimes and whale song fused, drifting across the water. Gendry, awakened, joined her. They watched the motes rise and drift east, toward Westeros ironically. For long minutes, crew stood mesmerized. Then pods dimmed, tree stilled. At dawn, Arya led a second party back. Under the tree lay hundreds of empty husks, thin membranes like dragonfly wings. Within some, she saw fragile residue, jelly-like, quickly drying. They might be airborne seeds, perhaps luminous spores. Her gut told her not to disturb them. Instead, she traced footpaths beyond the amphitheater to a tall gate, sealed by granite petals. A Raven Isles smith pried its seams, but metal hidden within resisted even Valyrian steel. Runes carved above showed swirling orbits around a central starburst, with a glyph meaning threshold. Arya wondered if this was a gate to another hidden archive, or perhaps to machinery still working. She debated. Her charter said preserve, not plunder. After council with the Fellowship delegates, she chose to close the ruins. They had recorded abundant data, intruding deeper risked unknown systems. They placed mirrored plaques inscribed in High Valyrian, Common and runes of the first men. Archive site, tread reverently, plus coordinates and drawings. Then they withdrew, leaving the hush intact. Back aboard Nightwolf, Arya convened council. Debate raged. Some wanted to settle a small outpost for long-term study. Others urged caution, citing unknown ecological balance. Arya sided with caution. But she proposed one measure. Build a beacon on the outer basalt pillar. Solar crystals found in the ruins could power a low hum, replicating the Carillon's entry signal, guiding future Fellowship expeditions while warning off raiders. For 5 days, carpenters and smiths anchored scaffolds to the pillar. They installed a circular ring of bronze, set crystals keyed to moonlight. They resonated faintly when aligned. At completion, the pillars sang low at dusk, a tone almost comforting. The fleet weighed anchor under violet twilight, leaving the inland sea to its centuries of contemplation. Weeks slipped by. They sailed southwest where currents swept them along hidden gyres. Crew charted constellations impossible to see from Westeros due to latitude. They mapped a chain of seamounts teeming with red coral. At one, divers retrieved a pearl the size of a swallow's egg, flecked with prismatic flashes. The Old Town physiker discovered that powdered coral petals healed arrow wounds faster. He documented dosage carefully. On the 91st day, a storm line forced them south. Darkness swallowed the horizon. Thunder rolled continuous. Lightning forked sideways across green clouds. The night wolf wallowed, spars creaking, but Arya's helm hands held steady. Gendry and Davos shortened sail. Still waves crashed high, deck awash. In the galley, barrels broke loose, smacking bulkheads. For 2 days, no stars. When calm returned, they found themselves surrounded by floating mats of vegetation, interwoven vines forming natural rafts acres wide. Tall stalks sprouted, tipped with violet lantern flowers. Water beneath was clear. Schools of cobalt fish drifted among vines. More curious, faint heat radiated from the mats, as though slow fermentation powered them. The botanists begged for samples. Crew cut sections, discovered gourd-like pods inside, filled with bright orange pulp, sweet as honey, restoring scurvy-stripped gums. They named the vine Sunbread. Navigating became tricky. Mats blocked passage. Finally, they sighted a break and pushed through, only to confront a ship, not fellowship, but foreign. It was elegant. Hull silver wood, prow shaped like a leaping marlin. Sails woven of iridescent fabric that shifted from jade to gold. No flag recognized. It sat adrift amid vines, listless. Through a spyglass, Arya saw no crew topside. She ordered approach, caution flags raised. Grapples secured, boarding party led by Arya and Pell crossed. The deck bore signs of hurry. Scattered tools, coils, a dropped goblet still crusted with thick blue beverage. No bodies. Cabins below were pristine, bunks made. Charts lay open, quills mid-stroke, but ink dried. The galley fire still smelled faintly of spiced tea. It was as though every soul vanished at once. They found one thing: a journal bound in silver thread, entries written in a language of angular glyphs. Lulaquo, who'd sailed in column indigo as diplomatic envoy, recognized patterns from ancient Ashai fragments. The last page contained a sketch of the basalt pillars. Below it, a symbol repeated thrice, 3 nested circles, and a vertical line through them, similar to glyphs at the ruined site. The date, if deciphered right, was only a month old. So another expedition had reached the pillars, perhaps penetrated further. And then, what? Abandoned ship. Arya ordered a search for logs. In the hold, they found crates of luminescent stones identical to pods from the Carillon tree, but these were empty, husks. Were these explorers harvesters? Smugglers? Had they triggered something? Gendry found scratches on the inside of the cargo hatch, deep gouges, like the Shadowcat's claws. Alarmed, they resealed the hold, posted guards. A storm from the west pressed them to weigh anchor alongside the ghost ship. Debates erupted. Scuttle the vessel, salvage it, tow it. Arya chose salvage. Knowledge outweighs fear. They renamed her the Farflame, crewed by volunteers. Nights. Sailors reported low whispers along her passageways, but chalked it to wind. 3 days later, Lookout cried, shapes on horizon. Not land, whales. Except these leviathans bore long dorsal crests, ridged like obsidian knives, glowing faint turquoise. They cruised in formation around the fleet, matching speed. At dusk they breached, exhaling spouts that scattered sparks of blue light. Bioluminescence. Some believed them protectors, others muttered omens. The monsters remained for 2 days, then vanished. Finally, on the 132nd day, land heaved into view. Colossal cliffs rising sheer, striated purple and white. Waterfalls plunged from unseen heights. At their bases, deltas spread lush wetlands where silver grasses rippled. The ghost ship's charts hinted at such coast, labeled simply, Saracon. Fellowship captains cheered. Arya felt that now they had stepped wholly off edges of myth onto a continent no maester had dreamed. They established Camp Dawn on a high bank safe from tidal floods. Engineers erected palisades, though signs of large predators were scarce. Scouts ascended a ridge and returned babbling about a plateau filled with crystal spires humming like organ pipes. Arya organized an expedition. The climb was grueling, the air thin, plants waxy blue, soil flecked with mica. At the plateau's crest, they found a forest of hexagonal pillars of clear quartz, each 30 feet tall, bases fused into ridges. When wind swept across, the pillars vibrated, producing chords deep enough to vibrate sternums. And amid stems walked creatures, tall as men, skin like smooth basalt, limbs jointed but graceful, torsos narrow. Their heads were ovoid with no eyes, yet they oriented unerringly toward the newcomers. Pell swore and reached for sword. Arya raised a hand, halting him. She stepped forward alone. The basalt being did likewise. Its surface flickered pulses, matching the hum of pillars. Arya remembered the pods, the music, the vanished sailors. Connections sparked. She drew no weapon, but touched her chest in greeting, then extended open palm. The being mirrored. Seconds stretched. Its arm retracted. On the quartz surface appeared faint glyphs glowing white. Lula Quo, who had insisted on joining, gasped. Those glyphs were language. She stepped forward, sketching in the air a reply using light stylus from the Silverbark Sanctuary. Symbols glimmered briefly, then vanished into the creature's skin. It stepped back, pillars hum raising a note. Then, from behind columns, others emerged. 12, 2 dozen. They circled the fellowship party but not menacing. Instead, they projected images. Star maps, seas, the basalt gate, and Arya's own face at the tree site months earlier. The fellowship realized these beings had watched them from the moment pods burst. They were guardians. Shepherds of knowledge, perhaps. Lulaco translated fragments. Song of world, guard memory, seek harmony, share light. Arya spoke aloud, hoping tone might carry intent. We came to learn, not to take. The being nearest extended a limb. Inside, a cavity opened revealing a sphere, smaller than the map globes but swirling with soft color. Arya sensed an offer. She accepted gently. Warmth seeped up her arm, carrying impressions. Tidal charts, medicinal flora, formulas for forging alloys lighter yet stronger than steel. She gasped, tears springing at the beauty and responsibility. Then images changed. She saw King's Landing's harbor, peace fragile. Saw dragonfire reflecting in blades. Saw a red hand rising again. The sphere pulsed, urging. She understood. Knowledge demanded stewardship, lest fear twist it. She nodded. Solemn promise. The being's ridge flashed aquamarine. Pleased? Then they retreated into pillars, whose song quieted as wind died. The beings folded into stillness, indistinguishable now from stone statues. The expedition withdrew in reverent silence. Back at Camp Dawn, Arya gathered journal pages and dictated new code to the Fellowship Council. No artifact leave a site until trust with Guardians established. Any transformative knowledge vetted by all regions. Research renewal paired with humanitarian mission. Unanimous vote. But one dissent whispered. The Farflame's first officer, a Tyroshi exile named Makaro. He argued the sphere's metallurgy alone could arm fleets. Arya warned him. Yet that night he vanished, Farflames slipping away into moonless sea, pods in her hold. Pursuit failed. The ghost ship's sails glowed, outrunning oared launches. Arya watched lights fade, cold dread. Would Makkaro repeat tragedies of Valyria? They reinforced alliances, set watchposts, coded raven signals, sea ravens they'd trained. Arya wrote to Sansa, "Knowledge is a blade. We must teach all how to hold it dull side out." She sealed letters with the new sigil and sent them east with a courier vessel. Meanwhile, Camp Dawn blossomed. Terraces irrigated, greenhouses propagating sunbread vines. A quay built for light research skiffs. Dothraki astronomers charted supernova remnants. Westerosi carpenters traded joinery secrets with Iron Island's shipwrights. Dornish sandsteeds foaled aboard quarantine paddocks, adapting to cooler climes. Months blurred into seasons. Arya led sorties north to glacial fjords, where they discovered living glass, arcs of translucent algae harnessing sunlight to melt crevices into warm pools. Physicers treated frostbite with its extract. She journeyed inland following river of mirrored surface, finding at its source a canyon whose walls contained shimmering fossils of creatures, part manta, part stag. In quiet hours she sat with the basalt sphere. Visions guided improvements. She forged a lighter dagger alloy, tested on rope under tension. It sliced silk but caught on flesh, a non-lethal restraint blade. She dubbed it Peace Talon. Yet always, echoes of Farflame haunted. Reports trickled. Fishermen near Jade Gates glimpsed silver sails. A pod of luminous leviathans washed ashore, scars across dorsal knives, perhaps from experimental harpoons. Fear that the stolen pods were corrupted gnawed her. 2 years post-departure, a raven, with black feathers shot purple, arrived bearing a strip of Taroshi silk embroidered hurriedly. Makkaro seeks Pentos, intends sail to Triarch. Could be bluff. Arya convened council. Decision. Not war, but diplomacy. She volunteered to return east with a fast sloop and the basalt sphere. Demonstrate to Essosi powers the benevolent path. Gendry insisted on accompanying. Lulaquo, too. Davos passed command of Nightwolf to Pell. The old knight would pilot Arya's sloop. The farewell at Camp Dawn echoed Winterfell's memory, but sharper. Children born at the settlement clung to her cloak. Scholars wept softly. She promised to return. As sails filled, pillars on plateaus sang, their resonance trailing like blessing across waters. Weeks later, in Pentosi Harbor, their sleek sloop docked. To their shock, the Concord embassy awaited. Tyrion, older but vigorous, Sansa's envoy Meryn Flint, Dornish diplomats, all summoned by rumors of silver sails. Makkaro had indeed reached the city. Triarch's planned exhibition of sky seeds able to light streets without oil. But experiments caused fever among handlers. Unknown spores clouded warehouses. Arya requested audience, bringing the basalt sphere as evidence of Guardian's message. Within the triarchal hall, Makkaro sneered. He now wore robes embroidered with the ghost ship's glyph, styling himself First Lightbringer. He claimed pods were gifts, not theft. Arya displayed the sphere. Its projection filled the hall with images of harmony. Then pictures of plague where balance broken. Some senators scoffed, but when she touched the sphere to Makkaro's pod, the pod cracked, spraying dust. Several guards coughed blood instantly. Healers panicked. Arya drew Peace Talon, sliced open banners to create masks, and ordered hall sealed. Over tense hours, Lulaquo formulated charcoal filters based on sunbread vine pulp. Fatalities stopped at 10 Conwy. The Triarchs voted to surrender pods to Fellowship custody. Makkaro attempted escape. Gendry tackled him into Fountain. He was arrested, sentenced to serve in quarantine station at Dragonstone orphan shelters. A fate echoing Cersei's. Crisis diffused, Tyrion invited Arya to Guest Manor. There, he revealed Westeros thrived. Bread riots faded. Charter matured into a league of realms. Daenerys and Jon co-ruled as dragon regents. Sansa governed a free north allied by treaty. School bells across 7 kingdoms emulated horizon chimes. Grey Worm married a healer from Summer Isles. Commanding City Watch turned civic guard. Bran's ravens delivered weekly star tables. Arya smiled, but felt tugged to return west. Tyrion understood. Over Arbor Red he toasted, to explorers who fight wars with maps. He slid a scroll. Old Town's archmaesters petitioning to establish first university at Camp Dawn. They departed Pentos in new company. 3 maesters, a Quarthian mathematician, and a quiet girl named Faria Waters, an orphan who'd survived the pod fever thanks to Aria's mask. The girl asked to apprentice, eyes bright with the same need to see that once drove Aria beyond King's Landing walls. Sailing west again, Aria penned fresh entries. Instructions on pod quarantine, alloy forging, peace talon. She dedicated chapters to children. Education in wonder. Humility before living archives. She wrote a letter to Daenerys proposing dragon riders survey new coasts. Dragons could map faster if guided by astronomers, but protocol must protect habitats. In closing, she reminded the queen that fire was a tool, not inheritance. Approaching the basalt pillars, they found the beacon intact, its crystal ring singing. Camp Dawn's harbor bustled with hulls under construction. When Arya stepped ashore, the Carillon tree's pods glimmered. Unburst this time. But a single pod opened, releasing a spiral of light that hovered before her, then drifted into the basalt sphere. It pulsed green. Message received. She slept that night beneath canvas, listening to pillars' music mingle with human song emanating from campfires. Thoughts drifted to distant Winterfell snows, to young Faria sketching constellations, to waters yet unnamed. She realized that the story she and her companions had begun needed no single finish. Its continuance lay in every hand willing to carry lamp and compass. The next morning dawned cloudless, wind fresh from south. Workers cheered as a newly framed hull, christened the Bright Ghost, slid into water. It was crafted of storm-end ironwood, armored in quartz scales, donated by the basalt beings. First true symbiosis of realms. Arya, Gendry, Lulaco, and Faria boarded for shakedown cruise. They cleared the basalt gates as sunlight fired across crystal prisms, casting rainbows over the sea. On deck, Faria asked if stories always needed endings. Arya knelt, watching the girl's reflection ripple on blue water. Endings happen when we stop asking what's beyond the horizon, she said. Promise me you'll keep asking. Faria nodded, eyes bright. Peace talon hung at Arya's side, but she felt its edge dulling under salt and wind, a sign of peace. The Bright Ghost swung west, sails taut. Behind, the pillar's hum faded into memory. Ahead, gulls unknown to any book wheeled over dark, beckoning sea. Arya set the con, heart steady, journal open, quill ready, continuing not because the tale lacked an ending, but because the world offered too many beginnings to ever cease.